Choose Stockton for a healthier tomorrow.
Choose Stockton to help those who need it most.
Choose Stockton and serve your community.
At Stockton University, the choices are unlimited. Choose to soar. Choose to be an Osprey. Choose Stockton.
Good morning, everybody. We are here on day 2 of the coming at us. A long day. Once again, 15 consecutive hours of coverage here with the NFL Draft Bible on Sports Illustrated. We have a lot to discuss this morning. A very unpredictable draft one, which we kind of all expected, but I definitely think some things were unexpected throughout last night. We have some fun guests coming on as well. Cam Lynch, a former linebacker out of Tampa Bay, as well as 2 draft prospects, defensive end Rashad Weaver out of Pittsburgh and wide receiver James Bryant out of Western Colorado. I'm Kayla Santiago along with Alec Polito. And Alec, we got to start with night 1. I mean, it was crazy. We were on the live coverage. A lot happened. Let's debrief it for everybody here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to be here. We got some great guests, obviously, but last night took the cake, right? It was a bunch of different things that we weren't expecting, some things that we were expecting, but really exciting first round and excellent to get through it. And I thought the live stream went really well.
Yeah, it was awesome to go through it, to really be on that coverage. Now, of course, we know the first 2 picks were pretty locked in. The Jaguars going Trevor Lawrence at 1 and Zach Wilson to the New York Jets at 2. Let's talk about that third pick a little bit. It was kind of back and forth, especially it seemed like more towards the draft. A lot of people were saying Mac Jones to the 49ers. They end up going Trey Lance. Do you think that was a good move by San Francisco?
I think it was the best move that San Francisco could make. And for me, Trey Lance was quarterback 2 because I love the intelligence, the physical attributes, and the arm talent that he possesses. Then you talk about the accuracy issues, but it's a footwork issue with him for accuracy, and that's way easier to fix than it is if it's a mechanical issue. So I think that's something that Kyle Shanahan and his QB staff will be able to shore up with him. But you talk about trading 3 first-round picks to get up to pick 3. It wouldn't have made sense for them to go with Mac Jones, who would have probably, we saw it, he would have been there at pick 12. And realistically, you were jumping Atlanta, who was not taking Mac Jones. So I think that it did make a lot of sense for San Francisco, and I think they made the right call.
I think they did as well. I really think Trey Lance is a lot better of a fit than Mac Jones, who did end up going to New England. So he is going to be under Bill Belichick's system there. And I think that he might thrive a little bit more under the New England system. Don't know if he'll get the start. But it's interesting with both of these guys because both of these guys are going into a system that already has starting quarterbacks. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo and Cam Newton, I'm not saying they're Tom Brady because they're not. But where do you see them kind of following? Do you think Jimmy G is on the outs? Do you think he stays? Do you think Trey Lance maybe sits a year? How do you see this all going?
Trey Lance has been talked about as a potential player to sit a year. And do I think that he might not start the year off? Yeah. But I also think that it's possible Jimmy G might want out, or they might want to get rid of that contract before the season starts. I think there's a $24 million cap hit that locks in place after June 1st. So if they're able to move on from that contract before then, that might make sense for San Francisco. But talking about, Trey Lance, he is, I think, ready to go. Now, the little technical issues in his feet, that's something that they're going to have to figure out. But I think that he's one of the smartest quarterbacks, if not the smartest quarterback in this draft, and bring him in to learn the system, which really does make it easier on quarterbacks. The Kyle Shanahan system is really creative and really helps the quarterbacks. They're going to be able to let him rely on the run game while also letting him rely on his legs as well early and often in his career. So I do think he's ready to go. I would be willing to start him right out the gate, but we've seen it. It can help quarterbacks to give them a month to kind of prepare in season. So maybe he sits 4 to 5 games. I don't know if Jimmy G is now that I don't know. I'm not talking about the character of Jimmy G, but I don't know if he really wants to be a guy who's going to start and then become a backup. So he might want to go somewhere where he has the chance to start long term. As for Mac Jones, it's really interesting because this offense, they've kind of reinvented it for Cam Newton, where they use a lot more quarterback runs. That's not something you're going to have Mac Jones do. He's a pocket passer. He moves well in the pocket, but he's not going to show you athleticism on the outside, right? So it's a little bit different of a system that he'd have to fit. Now, they do have a system that they've run before with Tom Brady where it's more of a pocket passer role, but it's not going to be so easy for them to transition it mid-games. So I might even see a situation where if they do decide that Cam Newton's a starter this year, we might not see Mac Jones active for a lot of games because I don't think he can be the backup to that Cam Newton system unless they have a backup system in place. And that's just a lot to put in week to week.
Yeah, Mac Jones and Cam Newton are definitely very different quarterbacks, a very different play style as well. And I think, you talk about Trey Lance going at number 3, not saying the 49ers have the best weapons, but they got a good one at tight end, and that's George Kittle. So Trey Lance isn't going to a team like, in a sense, Trevor Lawrence is, the Jaguars, who don't necessarily have those top-notch tight ends or receivers in the league so far. So maybe that's a situation where Trey Lance comes in. We also know Jimmy G was injured last year. The whole 49ers team was essentially. So I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of happens there. I think Jimmy G is on the out. I think Cam Newton stays, of course. And I think, Mac Jones might sit behind him just a little bit. Where would you see Jimmy Garoppolo going now? Obviously, New England's not going to be a destination. Right. There's no trade clause there, so he's able to pick where he wants to go. What do you think is the best landing spot for him?
It's interesting to think about because I thought New England would be the spot. It looked like New England would be the team that he'd want to go to, and he does have that no trade clause, so he can kind of pick where he goes. But now Chicago's out, right, because they get Justin Fields. Washington's a potential spot. They've only got 1 year on Ryan Fitzpatrick. Taylor Heineke's obviously there, who had the great playoff game, but there hasn't been much else that he's shown yet. So that's a spot that you could look at potentially. Maybe a team like New Orleans, if they don't enjoy what they've got in Jameis Winston, you could look for them. Another team that comes to mind as a real nice potential fit is Pittsburgh Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger, let's say that they move on from him after the season or he retires, right? Then that cap hit will be just fairly similar to what Jimmy G's is, so they can bring him in. It's not ideal to keep that and not draft the quarterback of the future, but if they feel confident in what Jimmy G can bring, they re-sign Mason Rudolph to 1 year, but I don't think he's their long-term future. So another team that could be potentially in on Jimmy G.
And we don't even just have the draft. We have a bunch of trades going on, a lot of moving pieces here. And I want to talk about a little bit of the trades right now that happened last night throughout the draft. Of course, the Eagles move up to 10. They end up trading with their rival, the Dallas Cowboys, to get their man Devontae Smith. And then, of course, Justin Fields, a shock to most people, at least to me, he's still on the board at 11. Chicago says, I'm going up. I'm ready. I want Justin Fields. I think that is a great move by the Bears, but I am absolutely shocked that Justin Fields dropped to 11.
Right. I mean, when you talk about pick 10 and 11, saying that the most shocking thing is not that the Cowboys and the Eagles were able to make a trade. It is quite a bit of shock to it. But listen, I thought that before the draft, the Giants' best move was to hope that one of those 5 quarterbacks falls to them and they could trade back for assets, right? I did not think that 2 would be there. I thought that we would maybe see 1. I certainly didn't think Justin Fields would be there, but Justin Fields gets there to pick 11, and it made too much sense for the Giants to trade out. I bet you that they had already been talking to Chicago on this possibility of the quarterback that Chicago wanted. They probably had this deal in place, ready to go in case he got there. I don't think the Giants really wanted to be in that spot at 11. Especially after Devonta Smith was taken the pick before, which is clear the Eagles were trying to jump the Giants for that for Devonta Smith, but I think that the Giants realistically needed to get out of that pick, and they still get a slot wide receiver now. Devonta Smith's not a slot wide receiver specifically, but they get a slot wide receiver who I think is going to fit into their system and give them a lot of versatility. But the key is Chicago, right? They move up. They traded a first next year, a fifth this year, so the Giants will have an extra fifth and a fourth next year to go get their quarterback, and this is not Mitchell Trubisky 2.0. Justin Fields is a phenomenal quarterback prospect with a tremendous arm, excellent accuracy, and now he's going to bring that running ability to this offense. Chicago does not have a long list of quarterbacks that they have been able to put pride behind. I mean, Walter Payton was like their third string quarterback when he was there. They have not really found that star quarterback, and they've tried. Here's a time where I think they finally did it. It was such a smart move for them to move up, because really you got to convince Allen Robinson to stay. You got to convince the fan base that you're on the way up. And what better way to do that than with Justin Fields?
And I think you're absolutely right there. I think, they needed a quarterback of the future, and that's exactly who you get in Justin Fields. And I think it comes to shock. I'm sure if Justin Fields isn't available, of course, the Bears probably stay where they are, or maybe try and move up a little bit, but there's no reason they would really need to. Now, I kind of want to go back to that Giants pick, though, because it really interests me. Of course, everybody was off the board that they could have possibly wanted at that time. J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, Devontae Smith, along with Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, and Kyle Pitts as well. I think those are the main guys and the targets that those 10, 11, and 12 picks were looking at. Now, are you surprised at all that the Giants didn't try and trade up, because they did get a receiver in Kadarius Toney? Do you think that maybe the New York Giants could have tried to get number 10 and beat the Eagles out a little bit? Or, of course, the assets come into play, but would you have liked to see them try to go to number 10 to get Devontae Smith?
I think for the Giants, once Denver had passed on Justin Fields, it was clear that the two quarterbacks were going to get to them. And I think at that point, they had already started calling Chicago and Washington and teams in the back end of the first round, because I don't think that their plan was to stay there and take a receiver at 11. I think that their hope was probably to move back to 20 and see if Devonta Smith fell, which we had heard that he could go late teens, right? And then, or take the next best receiver available for them, or maybe Rashawn Slater fell, or maybe an Elijah Vera Tucker fell, and they didn't. But Kadarius Toney they take at pick 20. I don't think that they were going to try and move up, just because I don't think Carolina was looking to move out. They wanted J.C. Horn, and they needed to get a corner one, and he's phenomenal. And at pick 9, Patrick Surtain goes. I don't think Denver was trying to move out. I thought they were going to take Justin Fields, but I don't think they were trying to move out. And now pick 10, obviously the Eagles went up. I think that Kadarius Toney maybe was a little bit of a stretch for the Giants, just as to value of the player. But you look at what he can do, and it's all tremendous stuff. Now the hands are a little bit shaky potentially. He doesn't have the greatest of hands, but on tape they seem fine. He's just had some drops that maybe are due to concentration. But you talk about the route running ability and then the start-stop ability, which is one of the best I've ever seen at that start-stop ability. I think that he is someone who can come in immediately and be a contributor on this offense.
And, Kadarius Toney, I don't think he's a wide receiver 1. He might not even be receiver 2, but the Giants don't necessarily need that. Now, I'm sure they would have loved Devontae Smith, but I think their target, as you said before, was a little bit more cornerback. If Surtain or J.C. Horn ended up falling to that 11th pick, they didn't. The Eagles ended up jumping up. It was really interesting to see, because, the Cowboys kind of messed up the Eagles last year by taking CeeDee Lamb, and now they do a friendly trade, even though they're rivals in the division. So it was fun to see that. Now, I want to talk about Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell as well. Now, I said yesterday that I think the Bengals should go Sewell for the pure fact that Joe Burrow is coming off a torn ACL. He has no help on that line, and you need to protect your quarterback. I get the LSU connection in Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is a phenomenal talent. Do you miss out on that? I don't know. Alec, if I'm the Bengals in this situation, I would go Sewell. I know that's going to be a kind of a hot take a little bit. I know people love Jamar Chase, but Joe Burrow still has no protection.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at it and you go, they felt that the depth, I guess, on day 2 was better for them at offensive line than it was at receiver. Jamar Chase is a phenomenal player that's going to make a lot of sense for them and be really dominant with back again with Joe Burrow, give him that number one target that he's been looking for. T. Higgins is way better off as a number 2. And then you talk about Tyler Boyd as your 3. That's an excellent 3 wide receivers to work with if you can fix that tight end position. Plus, they brought in Thaddeus Moss, who was also with both of them at LSU. But yeah, now you got to look at finishing or fixing this offensive line, and the interior is a mess. So now that's really where the depth of this class is, day 2 interior offensive line. So I guess they felt that they can get 2 solid players on day 2, fix the O-line, and they have Riley Reif and Jonah Williams on the outside. I guess they must have felt confident in that ability to fix it there, where they didn't feel like they could get a Jamar Chase level player, obviously, on day 2.
Yeah, and I mean, day 2, Jamar Chase level player was not even going to be available.
Right.
In the top 10, once you go out of that, he's not even available. It was so fun to see just kind of how the board fell. I was a little bit surprised at the Atlanta pick and Kyle Pitts, but I think in that situation, they want Matt Ryan as their quarterback of the future. You have to get that phenomenal talent at tight end. And now we are going to bring in a guest. We're still going to talk draft. We're going to see if this guest was able to watch last night's draft and their reactions, because a lot happened. We're still going to break it down. We're going to welcome in Cameron Lynch, a former linebacker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Rams. Cameron, thank you so much for being here with us this morning.
Thank you all for having me. I appreciate you.
Of course. Now, were you able to watch round 1 of the draft last night?
Yes, I was able to. I'm actually in Cleveland now. That's why you see the printer to my left. I'm in the hotel across from the stadium. So, yeah, it was an eventful night.
Yeah, anything in Cleveland that were you at the draft specifically, like at the event?
So, no, we weren't at the event specifically. We were serving for the prospects that are virtual. So, hopefully tonight I can go across the street because all the action's over there. But, we are on site, though.
Now, so much happened yesterday. I'm sure, as you saw, I think this is one of the most unpredictable drafts in a really long time, and I think it exceeded expectations. What were your thoughts? Were there any kind of picks that you were super surprised about or that you really liked last night?
Yeah, the Waddle pick, that for me was surprising. I think he was surprised as well. I mean, he didn't even get to hug his family. He was like, "Oh, I'm getting up and I'm going," right? Like that SpongeBob me, like I'm head on out. Like he left, and I think he was surprised. I think we all were, because even in the draft coverage prior to that, right, he mentioned Devontae Smith, like, hey, I got my money on him going first, and he ended up going first. But what I really liked about that was Devontae came outside of his room, Mac Jones as well, and gave him some hugs. So I thought that was really cool. It showed that brotherhood and camaraderie between the Alabama greats.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of Alabama players who went. Was there any pick that really surprised you in the first round?
Also, the Mac Jones pick, I wouldn't say it surprised me, but like I think his walk, the way he walked out, I think that surprised me a lot, right? Because I saw on social media there was a meme, Bill Belichick walking out of the tunnel, and then him walking to go get that hat. I thought that was really cool there, but it was a great night overall, right? Great night overall, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens this night as well.
Now, Cameron, you were a former linebacker for the Buccaneers, and your team actually took an outside linebacker in Joe Tryon-Shoyinka out of Washington. What were your thoughts on that pick?
I thought that was pretty cool, right? Because when it comes to Shaq Barrett and JPP, those guys are I want to say getting a little bit older, but we need someone to come in behind them, right, to carry the torch. If those guys need a breather, they are playing in Tampa where it can get up to 110 degrees, right, when the humidity kicks in and everything. So having someone to apply more pressure, I think, is big. And it also helps guys like Levante David and Devin White, where if you're applying pressure, these guys are able to move freely and make plays. So I think it was a great move by the Bucs, and I'm looking forward to see what they do tonight as well.
Yeah, and they're adding Joe Tryon to all 22 starters back from that Super Bowl run. I think that's phenomenal for them, and really begs the question, do you think that they have to be the favorite going into next year?
Without a doubt. And I do think they have to wipe clean what they did last year, right? I think Shaq Barrett was on Draft-a-thon. He was like, I'm done celebrating. Like, it's time to train. It's time to prepare for the season because it's going to be a new season, right? Everybody's getting drafted this year, and the new league year is going to start pretty soon. So It's a new year, and they're going to have to, like I said, wipe that clean, get ready to go out and win another one, because people are gunning for the Buccaneers. I mean, living in Tampa, that's title town. Then everyone's going after the champ. So it's pretty interesting to see, and I'm grateful to be a part of that program.
And I think they have a phenomenal defense. And of course, everybody's saying Tom Brady is getting another year older, but it just seems like he's getting younger each year because somehow he's still able to get everything done. Now, I want to talk about your startup in the league just a little bit. If I read correctly, you did go undrafted, but you still had a very good career. It seems like that happens a lot. Corey Clement, for example, for the Philadelphia Eagles, also went undrafted and scored a touchdown in that Super Bowl 52 win. Can you just give some advice for players that may be in the same position, maybe be feeling a little bit low, that go undrafted, but maybe get their shot to sign to a team after the draft is over?
Yeah, we were actually speaking about that in the room. I'm a part of the NFL Legends Development Program. So we're working at the front office of the league and player marketing communication. So we were speaking about that, like, hey, what happens for the undrafted folks? And it's very stressful because you're going through the whole draft, all 3 days, right, with your Excel sheet, looking and seeing how many linebackers they're taking and what teams have the fewest amount of linebackers. But what's good about that is kind of like picking a college, right? And it's like, okay, I want to go to this place because it's not far from home, or it's really far from home, and you can pick your destination and hopefully make your destiny more something that can get done, right? Something that you can really make you can make the team essentially. You want to pick your destination where you can make the team. And so if you're drafted in the 7th round, you can't really pick the team that you want to go to. That team might have more linebackers than you would have liked. So if you go undrafted, you're able to pick the team that you can feel like you have much success in.
Yeah, and you spoke about it, that how you kind of get to pick and choose your situation. Is this something, obviously now looking back on it, hindsight, it's a really good thing for you then instead of going late 7th, but was this something that in your mind at the time was really bothering you that you weren't drafted, or is it something that you knew of then that you were hoping you would get out of the 7th round so you could pick where you were going to go?
Yeah, so I had an idea that I would either go 7th round or undrafted. So I knew that, and it was great because I was like, okay. And this was my process. I had my Excel sheet, and I put down teams that had 7 linebackers or less. And so I tracked and saw if they drafted a linebacker or not. And so at the end of the night, I had the Rams and I had about 4 other teams who had minimal amount of linebackers. So praying that once the draft ended, my agent would be able to connect me with those exact teams, and then I would pick and see which team gave the best offer, which team made the most sense. And right, you also look at the linebackers that are already there. Are they veterans? Are they on their way out? So I was able to make that team as a rookie, and I wouldn't take that situation back at all.
And once again, we're here with Cameron Lynch, an NFL veteran, former linebacker for the Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, you've been through this process. You started out when you were young. You were able to go into the NFL. What is some advice you have for these younger guys? Of course, some of them signing big contracts already. What is some advice you have for them going to this next step and the next level?
Take care of your mental, take care of your chicken. Just like Marshawn say, right? I think those things are big. At the end of the day, going through this pandemic, right, mental health is huge. We all know that. And it's been elevated. So for professional athletes, for their families, I think it's important that everyone checks their mental. Make sure that, when you go and train your body, go train your muscles, train this muscle too, right? And I think that's what separates, elite athletes from great athletes, is that the way they operate from neck up is just next level, right? Like Tom Brady, we all see his draft pictures, right? He's not some 6'5", like 230, just like, ripped. It's his brain is just strong. And I would tell these athletes to, hey, if it's therapy, if it's meditation, if it's yoga, whatever it is, like, figure that out and train that muscle. And then to the second part, take care of your chicken, right? They're saying no is going to save you. And I always get slack for this because I'm super frugal, but I know that that people, they don't care, right? People don't care. They're like, hey, let me get this, let me get that, and saying no can take you a long way.
Yeah, and you talked about that, and you also talked about before how you can choose to either stay at home or kind of go far away from home. Is that something that you thought of, potentially having to go away from home where you're not going to have interaction with people that you knew years ago?
Yeah, so I went to Syracuse, right, in upstate New York. So that was far from home. It was a definite culture shock. I was born in California, moved to Atlanta, and then went to school up in New York. So that was insane. And so then after that, my next move was down to St. Louis, and going down to St. Louis was great because I was focused. And I don't know if anyone's been to St. Louis here on this call here, but there's not much to do out there, right? There's not much to do out in Earth City, St. Louis. And so it was a great start for me because the next year we ended up going to Los Angeles. And as I said before, I'm from Los Angeles. So there were a lot of distractions, a lot of driving around, making moves. And, when you're a rookie, you want to be extremely focused. And St. Louis provided that to me. So I'm extremely grateful for my opportunity there.
And you kind of talk about that focus, but I want to go back to your point about mental health a little bit more, just because it is so important, especially for these young athletes coming into the league. What were you able to do mentally when you signed with the St. Louis Rams, when you ended up transitioning to the Buccaneers? Or is the mental health aspect something you kind of picked up later along in your career or your life?
Yeah, so yoga really set the table for me when it comes to mental health, right? You have to lock in when you do yoga. You can't be scatterbrained when you do yoga. You have to be present. You have to be in the moment. And so that really, I started doing yoga when I was 15, right? My grandma and I, we used to do it in high school before the weeks before my game or after. And so that really locked it in for me. And then my practice really picked up though last year, right? The pandemic hit. And so I'm sure everyone went into a frenzy. And so I started meditating in the morning. I started reading my devotionals in the morning, and I started journaling. And those three things really kind of took my game to the next level. And of course, I was retired then, but it allowed me to kind of get focused, right? It provided vision for me. And so that's something I suggest to anybody and everybody. It's like, hey, no matter who you are, take some time for yourself. That self-care, that self-love will take you a long way, and it'll give you some endurance.
Yeah, and you spoke about post-retirement. Is this something this is obviously something that was important to you in the retirement phase? Is there anything else that you've kind of focused on while retired?
Yeah, so really, I'm realizing it's a marathon, right? When you're playing sports, it's a sprint. It's like, all right, how great can I do in this short amount of time? But when you're retired, it's like I have a lot of life to live. I'm only 27. You know what I mean? I was telling my buddy last night, who I went to Syracuse with. It's like, yo, I feel like I lived 3 lives already. When it comes to dogs, dogs are that's at 1 year, 7 years for a dog, and I feel like for athletes, it's 3 years. 1 year playing professional sports is 3 years. You know what I mean? And you just go through so much. You experience a lot, and you have to mature a lot faster. And so I'm realizing now that I'm retired, it's like, okay, this is a marathon. I got some time. You know what I mean? I got time to prepare, and when opportunities come to find success through that. So it's been a journey, and I've been focusing on taking my time, taking one day at a time, and being present at every moment.
Once again, here with former linebacker Cameron Lynch of the St. Louis Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on today. Before you go, I want to ask you one question. Who is your favorite pick that you want to see picked in the second or third round, or maybe a sleeper guy that you think will do well?
So as I said before, I went to Syracuse University. So I'm going to root for my guy, Andre Cisco, safety out of Q. So I'm praying that he gets drafted very soon here.
How about Afatu Melifonwu from Syracuse as well? You think he might be hearing his name pretty soon?
Most definitely. Let's get these guys off the board, man. We need more Syracuse guys in the league. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm praying that those guys have a great and successful career, and that they take care of their mental and they take care of their chicken.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cameron. It was great to have you on this morning. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. And we're looking forward to night 2, round 2 and 3 of the NFL draft later on. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Once again, Cameron Lynch, a former linebacker of the Buccaneers and the Rams. I think it's always great to have people on, especially, that have been through this process, to give some advice to these younger guys of they've been there before, they've lived it. And I think it's really awesome to kind of hear his insight, especially going in to draft weekend.
No, it's crucial. And there's a part of the draft that kind of gets forgotten with, as this is great for some athletes who make their dreams come true. Some have that dream and it doesn't come to fruition as they go undrafted. But like Cameron said, that does not mean your career is over. There are plenty of other things that you can control. And look at how prepared he was. He knew that he was one of those late round selections, and he had teams that he was ready to go to already prepared. These are things that other players can be doing. And it's really crucial for players to know that even though you go undrafted, there's a whole journey ahead of you. And it's real interesting to hear from him and hear those success stories.
Absolutely. And as you said before, some of these guys' dreams don't come true. And that definitely has to be tough, especially mentally. I mean, he talks about that mental health aspect. Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine what's going through your head, but he was able to make it work. He got signed to the St. Louis Rams. He was able to live out his dream. Sometimes it's not the way you drew it up, but hey, that's life. It's never really the way you draw it up. And, I think for him, that just goes to show some guys that just because you don't hear your name called doesn't mean it's over.
No, exactly. And not to mention here, we're talking about 256 or 260 something players that get selected. Just because you're not in that 260, if you're in that top 700, if you're in that top 1,000 players, that is an excellent accomplishment in life. We're not talking about players who don't get drafted being terrible football players. We're talking about them being just missing the cut of the draft. These are still players that are excellent. And that's why you see so many undrafted free agents really make it in the league, because they can figure out their game later. These guys are 21 to 23 years old. They're not completely developed in themselves yet. So there's a lot that's why there's a lot of misconceptions in the draft or picks that go wrong or picks that go right in the late rounds, because these guys are not fully at what they can be yet. There's a lot to happen. And undrafted free agents have every much the same abilities that guys who get drafted do. And that's why you see some of them succeed. And I love to see it.
I do as well. And we still got 6 rounds ahead of us, including the other players that might get signed to a team that might go undrafted. But right now, you're watching the State of Football Part 195. We're here at Atlantic City at Stockton University. We're going to take a quick break right now to hear from one of our sponsors.
Choose Stockton for a healthier tomorrow.
Choose Stockton to help those who need it most.
Choose Stockton and serve your community.
At Stockton University, the choices are unlimited. Choose to soar. Choose to be an Osprey. Choose Stockton.
We are here on the State of Football Part 195 on NFL Draft Bible from Sports Illustrated. Once again, we're here in Atlantic City at Stockton University, bringing you 15 consecutive hours of draft coverage all weekend long. I'm Kayla Santiago along with Alec Polito. And Alec, You have been able to be at the Tropicana, the sportsbook, kind of giving us draft coverage. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I was there last night at the William Hill Sportsbook, and it was a great experience, and the setup they had was beautiful. One of the largest sportsbooks in Atlantic City, featuring 180 seats, a 250 square foot odds board, and massive panoramic LED lights and screens, is conveniently located in the north tower of the casino floor, adjacent to Chickies and Pete's Crab House and Sports Bar at 10 North. It was a phenomenal experience being there, and I'll be there again tonight. I mean, the screens they had were massive. Felt like I was watching the draft from my dreams.
Yeah, you might have heard some cheers there at the sportsbook as Alec was seeing all the live reactions of people reacting in the casino last night to the humongous screens. We actually able to get over and see it as well. Might have heard some boos at some picks that were very unpredictable, and I kind of want to go back to that one pick, Alex Leatherwood. Now, a good player, of course, getting drafted. Good player in general, but going at 17 to the Las Vegas Raiders, shocked.
Yeah, a national champion and one of the better offensive linemen on that outstanding offensive line that kept Mac Jones protected all year. But when you talk about Alex Leatherwood, you're talking about a tackle who has length concerns and speed concerns and is a powerful tackle. But when you talk about that, you really more so want to transition those guys inside. And that's fine. Alex Leatherwood can be an excellent guard in the league, I think, personally. And I thought that he was going to realistically get a shot at tackle to early in his career, but expect to move him into guard. But they clearly decided that he was a tackle for them. And Las Vegas has continued with this trend of drafting players who won at the college level in the early rounds. It's something that's interesting to think about. I mean, they're building a culture for sure, but they've been stretching on these players for years. And it's just interesting to me why, when you can get Alex Leatherwood, they could have gotten Alex Leatherwood with, I think, pick 80, which they have, or 81. They have back-to-backs there. They have a second-round pick. It's real early for me. Listen, the team has done more work on him than I have, so if they feel confident in him, you obviously have to go make that pick. Don't worry about the outside media, but it just seems like they constantly are stretching on these first-round picks that they could be getting in the second round. Like, for me, Christian Darrisaw was still on the board, who had talked about his abilities to play right tackle, and that's where you probably bring him in, right? I think Elijah Vera-Tucker was already off the board at that point, but Spencer Brown was still on the board, who has that same build as Colton Miller. I don't know. I just didn't – I thought it was too much of a stretch. Like, the projection for Alex Leatherwood isn't great for them, and at pick 17 with so many other players on the board, and I hate to harp on him. He is a solid player. He was a great player in college, helped them win that national championship, like I said. He's going to have a really solid NFL career, but I think it's going to be a guard. I don't think he's going to be able to stick out there at tackle.
It's really interesting to me, too, and you bring up a great point there. The Raiders have later picks, right? It's not like Alex Leatherwood. Now, would he be there at pick 80? Maybe, maybe not, but maybe that's a situation where you make some calls, where you're in the war room and you say, listen, I want to trade up in the second and third round to try and get Alex Leatherwood. Why are you getting him at 17 when Christian Darrisaw, who somehow in some world dropped to 22 in the first round? I don't know how that happened. But when I saw that pick on the TV, my jaw dropped a little bit. Now, I don't want to, like you said, I don't want to harp on this player. He is a good player. I just think in this situation, when you look at best player available and best position available, Christian Darrisaw is still out there. And I think with Alex Leatherwood, that's a call you make later on if that is the guy you're keeping your eye on.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, and you really just hit it right on the head there. They've got pick 80 and pick 81. The chances of them sticking there and taking two guys back-to-back probably aren't the greatest. You usually would move one of those picks because you don't need both back-to-back. Why not package them and come up? And you said, I do think there was a chance Alex Leatherwood could have gotten there to 80, but regardless, if you think that I don't think he was going anywhere before pick 50. If you put 80 and 81 together, I think you could absolutely get up to pick 50, 55 range of day two, or round two, mid-round two today. I think that it's easy to project forward at least those picks and maybe a late round pick. And we talked about it again yesterday. This day 3 is not very valuable. They're going to be looking to get rid of some of those picks to move up. I just didn't see the value to go up or to stay at 17. At least if you're going to do that, move back from 17. Nobody was taking, at least to my knowledge, nobody was taking Alex Leatherwood probably in the first round at all. Think about who could have come up to get Christian Darrisaw there. I bet you they had calls, or at least make the calls yourself. I just think that you could have moved back from that pick, and it would have been a better value.
And I think, you talk about Christian Darrisaw right there. The Vikings had that 14th pick. They end up going back to 23. Yeah. Christian Darrisaw literally fell into their laps. When you take Alex Leatherwood, I think you're the Vikings and you're confident as ever because you're seeing all of these defensive ends going on the board. You take Kadarius Toney if you're the New York Giants, Kwity Paye along with Jamin Davis, the linebacker, Jalen Phillips, the defensive end as well. You're seeing all these guys go. You know that the Tennessee Titans, most likely, they need more of a right tackle, and Christian Darrisaw is more of a left tackle. Now, he probably could transition. We talked to him yesterday, actually. It was a great interview with Christian Darrisaw. You will have him on here on the State of Football. He said he'd be willing to move to right tackle, but that's more of a developmental process. So I think the Titans were looking for something a little bit more immediate. And Caleb Farley, now we know about his injury situation, but I think that's just a better fit. The Minnesota Vikings had to be so psyched in that war room when they drop back and they still get the guy that they want.
It's interesting because I think that there was a possibility that Elijah Vera Tucker might have been the guy they were in on, but they might not have been sold at 14. Obviously, the Jets were. The Jets come up from 23 to 14 to get Elijah Vera Tucker, who fits with them so perfectly. But now the Minnesota moves back to 23. I think in no circumstances they think that Christian Darrisaw would be sitting on the board there, and he was. So I think that it works out for Minnesota. Of course, they get some picks, and they still get the guy that I think fits them the best. But I think Minnesota made some great moves yesterday.
I think so as well. Now, are there any picks before we welcome on our next guest real quick in this first round that really surprised you, or any other team that you would have liked to see trade up or trade back to try and get somebody that they wanted?
Yeah, well, I was really happy that Greg Rousseau ended up in Buffalo. I think that's a great fit. You talk about them being able to develop these athletic freaks, which Greg Rousseau is, and you're going to put him in that 4-3 defensive end role, which is what they kind of tried to fix with A.J. Epineza, and I didn't love the fit. You put him in there, it's going to help Ed Oliver, going to get him, give him the ability to get a little more pressure. It's going to help Tremaine Edmonds. It's going to be able to help the corners. They won't have to cover for as long. I loved that pick. I was a little bit shocked with the Travis Etienne pick, just because I think Travis Etienne is an upgrade from James Robinson? Absolutely. Do I think he fits better? Yes. Do I think that pairing him up with Trevor Lawrence is smart? Yes. But I think that you talk about taking a running back there with so many tackles on the board, and the tackles that they have right now are questionable. And then you talk about potentially getting another corner or safety there might have made more sense. But I do love Travis Etienne, the player, and I'm really excited to see him back with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that point real quick of Gregory Rousseau going to Buffalo. That team is going to be scary this year. Yep. They already have a high-impact offense, of course, with Josh Allen in year 3. Stephon Diggs already building that connection. We see how far they went last year. And now you're just adding Gregory Rousseau to that defense, which their defense was pretty decent last year. I think, right. They definitely went through a little bit of injuries, but they were more on the upscale of defensive in the NFL last year. And I think this Bills team is going to be scary. And last year we saw a glimpse of it, but I think this year we're going to get the real thing.
As long as Josh Allen is able to keep up that level of play, which I think he can do, Brian Daboll's system really does fit him well, and he's obviously a talented quarterback, don't get me wrong. But, I think this gives them a pass rush that they desperately need, and they're going to be able to develop him into an even better pass rusher because he's still developmental. And now you've got A.J. Epineza, Ed Oliver. You've got some really good stars on this defense, Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds on that linebacker core. And then you fix up the offensive line a little bit. I think this is probably one of the best bets to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC.
If you're making early bets and you're at the casino like we are, maybe go bet on the Buffalo Bills. I don't know. I'm just saying, or maybe wait until after the draft to see who else they get. But we do have a draft prospect coming up. We're super excited to talk to him, kind of feel where he's at throughout this process right now. That is the defensive end, Rashad Weaver out of Pittsburgh. Rashad, thank you so much for being here with us this morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Doing great. We really appreciate you taking the time with us. I know it's a very busy time for you, but how are you feeling today?
I'm good. It's gonna be a long day till 7, so I'll try to get some breakfast and maybe go get a workout in and pass some hours, and then I'll just be excited and ready for the night. Uh, be ready to hear my phone ring and see my name called and enjoy the moment.
And you talk about enjoying that moment in the preparation right now that you're kind of growing through. But can you talk about the emotions a little bit? Of course, I'm not sure if you were able to watch night one, but kind of just seeing how it was very unpredictable night one. How are you feeling at the moment right now as the weekend goes on?
Yeah, I think a lot of positions, a lot of surprises round one, but it just keeps you on the edge of your seat, and you don't know what's going to happen or what teams are going to think, and almost just like I'm holding my breath. Like I said, just waiting until I get that phone call and I hear from a coach or a GM or whoever it is. So I'm just waiting. I really don't know how to feel. And like I said, I kind of feel like I'm just holding my breath.
Yeah, no, but one of the things that maybe a little bit more on the positive for you, or there's a ton of positives for you, but one of the things I really loved about your game was the versatility for you. You showed the ability to pass rush from the inside, showed the ability to pass rush from the outside, and then your Pitt film was phenomenal in the aspect of you're a great run defender, excellent at getting to the passer, and that's something that can fit with any team. Is that have you talked to teams about potentially playing any role that they want on that defensive line?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes down to it, it just depends what type of defense they run, whether they run a 3-4 or 4-3. But I've talked to all type of teams, and they could just see me playing stand up all the way down into a 3 because they just know that's something I could do, and I have the versatility, and I can make plays wherever they line me up. So I'm excited about that, and I know, wherever I go, they'll put me in the best situation to go make plays and make the team better.
And once again, if you're just tuning in with us, we're here with Rashad Weaver, the defensive end out of Pittsburgh. And you talk about that versatility is definitely seen throughout your tape. It's awesome to watch. And a lot of teams are going to be looking at that. Now, are you in Cleveland? Where are you kind of at right now? Who are you celebrating with if you do hear your name called throughout this weekend?
Yeah, I'm definitely not in Cleveland. I am in South Florida. With the sun out by the pool, chilling, and I'm with mom, dad, sister, grandparents, and family friends. And we're just at one of my friends' house. Got a whole little setup. They went overboard. I think there's like some cookies or something with my face on them or something going on in there. But so they're all excited, and they got 3 TVs, all one outside, 2 in the house, different places, and we're just all sitting, watching, and enjoying the night.
No, I think that South Florida might be the better move than Cleveland, but no disrespect to Cleveland, but I think I'd rather be down in South Florida as well. You got a ton of teammates who are also going through this process with you. Has that been able to help you, being able to lean on them as well?
Yeah, I think, we all check in on each other when we see each other. We work out together. We all keep in contact. So it's more just doing what we've always done, been around each other, working out, but through maybe the phone or text or Snapchat, whatever it is, just keeping up with each other and wishing each other, best of luck throughout the weekend. Guys texted me yesterday night, me texting them, just wishing the best for each other, best of luck. And we all know wherever we go, we'll make an immediate impact because that's just what, Pitt players do once they get to the league.
Yeah, and you talk about, that immediate impact. So I want to talk to you, the versatility is there, the quickness is there in your game. What separates you in your mind from other defensive ends that are prospects this year?
Yeah, I think, this year there's a lot of great guys, especially a lot of athletic freaks. But I think, me personally, my technique and awareness of the game is just at a high level, And I think my ability to just really, utilize my technique in games, not just in practice or on bags and stuff like that, but when I get out there and it's on film, I show just winning in various ways with a bunch of moves, counters. When something doesn't work, I get to the next move quick. And just, I think over and over, you see me just defeating blocks with my hands, not letting guys get to me. And then, stopping the run, whether I'm the one making the play or taking on 2 blocks or, just causing havoc in the backfield so somebody else can make the play. I think there's just there's production all over the tape, but it's not just off of, athleticism, stuff like that, but it's with great technique, which I think teams really love to see.
Yeah, you pinpointed it there. One of the things that I loved about your game was I thought you had the ability to two gap in the league, which is something, for a guy your size is phenomenal. And then you talk about the abilities. Hey, I can come in and play 3 tech on that third down roll. I could push out to a 9 tech if you need, really corner off the edge. You showed all that versatility down at the Senior Bowl, and we saw a lot of Senior Bowl guys get drafted. And I'm expecting that day 2, we're going to see it might be a clean sweep of Senior Bowl guys. There's going to be so many going off the board. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, all those guys down at the Senior Bowl, it was a great experience. They brought the best of the best out. And just to be around those type of guys, it was fun. And for me, that was the first time I ever played 3 tech. So, I mean, I was learning the whole week. And just to go out there and learn it in 3 days, not the pass rush part, but to be able to take on a double team and play the run, it's a little different in there. Them boys big, man. I'm used to the edge. I call that the suburbs inside there. Where you get that, that's like the trenches. You got to be careful around there. So to learn that and get better every day and kind of add it to my resume and just give myself the confidence to know that, like, if I actually practiced it, I would be able to get in there and hold my own. So just to go and learn even more, add to yourself and your skill set was fun and a great opportunity. And, I'm blessed that they picked me to be there, and I appreciate it.
And definitely well-deserved for you being there. And you talk about getting better every day. You say that this is a dream of yours, and you can't wait to get that phone call and hear your name called. So how long have you wanted this star ever since you were a little kid? Where did that passion come from for football?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, my mom's had me in sports since I was 3. T-ball, soccer, basketball, all that. I started playing tackle football. First year I ever played football was tackle football. It was about 3rd grade. And then really when I moved down to South Florida, that's when, I was born in Indiana, so there it's a basketball state. So I moved down to South Florida, and down here it's the best high school football in the country, and they produce year after year. And I got to become a part of that environment and compete down here. And it just kind of became ingrained in me, and it's what I wanted, and it became my goal. I always, growing up, knew I wanted to play a sport. I didn't know which one at the time. I played 4 sports all the way to high school. But once I really got down here, and you always like what you're good at, and realized how good I was at football, I really just fell in love with it, and it became my ultimate goal.
Do you think that playing multiple sports like you did actually helped your athleticism grow and kind of expand?
Definitely. I think that's something, and a lot of great athletes like that in the NFL say it all the time, don't just put your kid in one sport when they're young. Sports translate. I think basketball is definitely footwork in football. You can tell like an O lineman or a D lineman or someone that might not be a skill position when they played other sports, and you can see it in their footwork and how they move and how they can shuffle or cut, basketball movements that translate to the field. And just a bunch of things, the quarterbacks that play baseball or anything like that. So I think it's good because, and you never know, if you solidify or put your person or kid in one sport, they might be the number 1 pick in baseball, but the 2nd round pick in football. You got to give them opportunity to flourish in what they like and love, and I think that'd be the best outcome.
Yeah, hey, you might be the next Michael Jordan, able to play some baseball and basketball as well and be at the top of the game in both. So I definitely, I think that's a piece of advice as well. Just kind of, you're a 4-sport athlete, of course, all the way up until high school, and using those elements from those other sports, for example, basketball, the footwork, utilizing it in your game of football, I think is something that a lot of people, especially a lot of youth athletes, need to pay attention to. Now, of course, hearing your name called on draft night throughout this weekend, I'm sure is something you're going to be looking forward to. But is there anything else you kind of have lined up that you're excited for throughout this weekend?
I don't, just to enjoy my time in Florida, with the family and friends. I don't know when I'll have to report for rookie minicamp or where I'll be at. I'm just kind of in a limbo waiting to get a schedule and know what's next up for me. So I'm just trying to stay as calm as I can be, which I don't know how calm that is, or relaxed. I'm pretty calm. I'll say relaxed. Inside, I'm not very relaxed, but pretty lax on the outside. But I'm trying to stay, as cool and calm as I can and just enjoy it. And not overthink any of it because, a lot of guys wish they were in this position. that won't be drafted. And just to know, I know I will be drafted. It's just a matter of when. So I'm just enjoying it. Nothing's set for me this weekend, and I'll probably after I hear it, figure something out for that night or something.
Yeah, there's no question that, at least in my mind, you are a surefire draft pick and a very good one at that. And we appreciate you joining us. Now, is there some sort of thing that you've been working on in your game over the offseason that you've really wanted to fix or just improve for NFL teams?
Absolutely. So, I mean, just it started even when I was out in Phoenix and I was training, just getting my body more, more muscle, less fat. That's always better, just leaning out, you can be big, but it can be more muscle. And then when I do my drills, just really focusing on my consistency with pad level. I want to be, especially for tall guys, you hear that from the time you're in middle school all the way through college, get your pads down. And then, when I have low pads, I think that's when I look elite on film and, I make good plays. It's when you get up high and you're just looking around, you might not look as good as you actually are. So for me, it's just really focusing on that consistency of pad level, and I think I'll be just fine.
Awesome. Well, Rashad, thank you so much for your time. We can hear the birds chirping. You're in the Sunshine State, a lot warmer than it is over here in Atlantic City in New Jersey. So enjoy your time while you can. Best of luck for your future. We're excited to see where you go. And thank you so much once again for coming on this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on this morning, and I hope you guys can enjoy your New Jersey weather.
We'll try. It's been a little bit windy here, but nothing like Florida. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, once again, that was Rashad Weaver, the defensive end out of Pittsburgh. And Alec, I think a lot of teams are starting to realize just how much defense can really impact this league. Now, you look at the Buccaneers, you look at the Colts, who the Colts logistically made their playoff run off their defense. Mm-hmm. I mean, Phillip Rivers was not doing the job by any means, and their defense is really what carried them. We talked about the Buffalo Bills just a little bit ago as well. How important do you think it is for teams to kind of look at his tape and see what he can do? And where do you think he would be best fit?
Well, you talk about it, and we're really transitioning more into a Rashad Weaver type period in the NFL. And I mean that in a good way for him, because we're looking at positionless defense being the name of the game at the next level. We saw last night, Zaven Collins goes to the Arizona Cardinals, a guy who has a ton of versatility on that second level. Well, we've been having trouble finding guys who have that crazy versatility on that defensive line level. And now you bring in a guy like Rashad Weaver. You can play him pretty much anywhere. But the key is third downs, you have to take out some of your interior defensive linemen to bring in rushers. Well, the best thing to do for that is to have a guy who's a dominant rusher on the inside that you can just transition in, right? So Rashad Weaver is able to take his role from that 9-tech in. Now, I think that his best fit in the NFL is more so in a 4-3 system where he's able to play that 5-tech to 3-tech role. But I think he can fit really in any system. It's just a matter of where they're going to use him. And I think that he can be useful in any system.
I think so as well. And I think the versatility is definitely going to be the reason that he's able to do so well at the next level and why a lot of teams are going to look at him. It's always awesome to have guys on here. We had Christian Darrisaw yesterday who did get drafted in the first round. So we'll see if Rashad Weaver goes tonight. It's pretty cool to see their dreams come true. And then us just talking to them a few hours earlier, just getting that journey, getting that story. That's one of my favorite parts of this whole entire process, that we get to talk to these guys, because at the end of the day, they're humans going into the NFL, and just seeing, the layers to them, the excitement, the nervousness going into this moment. It's awesome to see. No,
and it's outstanding to get to speak with him and all the players that we've gotten to speak with, but Rashad especially, just because, obviously the nerves are there for him, but he still comes on and takes the time to speak with us. So I think that speaks to the type of person that he is, the type of person that the team will be getting. And we do, of course, appreciate his time. Caleb, we've got some crazy picks that could be happening, though, on day 2. We've got a lot of players left on the board. Any thoughts on what we might be seeing at the top?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was scrolling through Twitter last night, and I'm seeing, Adam Schefter tweet out some top players available for Friday. Of course, Jeremiah Osu-Karamora, who was, in my opinion, surprised that he didn't go in the first round. I really thought that he would. Christian Barmore as well out of Alabama. I know the off the field concerns are definitely maybe a reason why he didn't get drafted in the first round. The character issues may be there. I mean, we don't know personally, but those are the stories that we've heard. And then you also kind of go to Trayvon Moverig, Elijah Moore, Rondell Moore as well, Nick Bolton, Baron Browning, Asante Samuel Jr. I was a little bit surprised that, Joe Tryon went above Nick Bolton in the first round. Now I think the outside linebacker may fit a little bit better for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But these are some guys that could have gone first round. And it's going to be interesting to see where they go, because we all think that they're going to go right in the second round, right in the beginning. But as we saw last night, everything is unpredictable.
Well, the first guy you said, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, it was shocking to me. The Notre Dame linebacker who has that versatility to potentially play safety role, linebacker role. We had heard yesterday from Albert Breer that potentially he was dropping due to Isaiah Simmons' play in his rookie season. And I think Isaiah Simmons came on at the end of the year, and he's going to have a pretty good season and career as we go forward. But I don't think that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is the Isaiah Simmons build. Isaiah Simmons is a 6'5", very lengthy and twitchy athlete who moves well. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to me is more so the Jeremy Chin build. And I think that Jeremy Chin last year was dominant. So I didn't get why he'd be dropping because of that. Whereas you're looking at a Owusu-Koramoah more so in that Jeremy Chin role. But I'm shocked that he's still on the board. And for me, I think that you are going to see a lot of teams trying to move up. Now, I don't think that the Jaguars will trade out, because I think they can get another guy right here. I'm thinking it's going to be on the offense, just because they are committed to helping Trevor Lawrence out. It might make sense to see them go with a potentially a tackle here. I mean, we've got Samuel Cosmi still on the board, Spencer Brown still on the board, both of those tackles. That could make a lot of sense for them. But then you get to the Jets at pick 34. Hey, they could take a Spencer Brown or Samuel Cosmi as well, put him on the right side. Spencer Brown fits so perfectly with them. And you bring him in, that offensive line is fixed, and now you got Zach Wilson with an offensive line. Sure, it's not the greatest of weapons yet, but you got Denzel Mims, you've got Corey Davis, and you've got you got a room to improve, and I think that's the key. Is Zach Wilson with an offensive line is going to be crucial for them. But then after that, I think that's where you're going to start to see a ton of teams trying to move up. I think that we could see potentially, anyone in that mid-ish range in that second round, I think is going to try and get up. Don't be surprised if the Giants move up. They just got some draft capital. Maybe they want to package a little bit of their other draft capital and get up for potentially an offensive guard. I think they can wait till their pick at 43, potentially get one. But maybe they want an edge rusher. Maybe there's someone at the top that they want. It wouldn't shock me if the Dallas Cowboys, who moved back yesterday, try and come up and get another defensive player. I mean, they got Micah Parsons, but they still have not fixed that safety position. That corner position. And there's a couple left for them to potentially go up and get.
Yeah, Asante Samuel Jr. is the name that I think of that may fit in well with the Dallas Cowboys at that secondary position as well. But I think, it seems like the second and third round is the most pure time for inside the workroom. The calls going on, what is happening, the trades going up and down. I was surprised a little bit we didn't see more trades in round one. So I think round two is where this is going to happen. But what position do you think is going to go first? I mean, listen, I think defensive end and corners may be the top positions in the beginning of that second round, but where do you think it lies? Now, running backs are still on the board. Of course, there's some offensive linemen that are very good still on the board. Which position do you really think is going to be key in the start of the second round?
It's interesting because historically, quarterbacks are not a very round two driven position, and I don't see that. I don't really have a lot of quarterbacks in that range. But I do think that we might see a guy like Davis Mills go early and maybe a team moving up. We might see a guy like Kyle Trask potentially go. But I just think it's a little bit early for them. But it's definitely possible. Running back, we still have a running back on the board that I had a first-round grade on, which was Javonte Williams, the running back at UNC, who is a dominant runner, probably the best pure running back in this class. Doesn't give you the greatest amount as a receiver, but still a solid receiver. Great pass blocker from the backfield. So I think that maybe someone like him could go early to a team that's running back needy. Look at the Jets at pick 34. They absolutely need a running back. Now, I don't know if the fit is perfect with the Jets, but I do think that he can run that zone scheme running game that they possess, or that they're likely to bring in. And I think that 34, he's at least in the conversation. Obviously, he can't be for 33 because they just took Travis Etienne. But, I mean, he's got to go at some point. Then you look at the receiver position. Terrace Marshall didn't leave the board. You look at Elijah Moore, he didn't go. There's a lot of receivers that could go early and often. Looking at the offensive line, we have a ton of tackles who fell. And then day 2 has been known to be the place where offensive guards are going to go, right? That's the key. It's the offensive guards are going to dominate day 2. And we only saw one of them go in the first round. So there's going to be a lot of offensive guards potentially. And then you talk about defense. Cornerback, to me, I mean, Afatu Melifamu, I had a first-round grade on. He's still on the board, but there's plenty of others as well. Tyson Campbell should go off the board pretty early. We've got safeties like Trevon Merrick and Andre Cisco from Syracuse, who probably are going to have to go off the board fairly soon. And then, linebacker position, Nick Bolton's still sitting there. Baron Browning. Chaz Surratt might hear his name called in this, and Monty Rice, potentially from Georgia, could hear his name. There's a lot of players that are going to come off the board early and often, obviously, and I like this day 2 range. The thing is, though, we're going to see a lot of trades early, I think, for teams to come up and get their guy that fell out of the first round. But I think we're also going to see a lot of trades into the late 3rd round because teams are not going to want to fall back to day 3 to try and catch one of these guys.
Yeah, and I think, the biggest get right here, I think, is that offensive lineman, because you don't want to be too late in the 2nd round where you miss out on those picks. So I think the calls are really going to be towards that offensive line, those offensive tackle. We talked about it yesterday on the live coverage that what if Darrisaw drops to round 2? Because maybe some teams think they can get an offensive tackle, especially because round 2 is very offensive tackle heavy now that a lot of these guys drop. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. When we get back, we will break down more of the 2nd and 3rd round of the draft. Once again, live coverage for 15 consecutive hours here on NFL Draft File from Sports Illustrated. We have James Bryant coming up in just a little bit. But for right now, we just sat down with Rashad Weaver a little bit ago. We're going to take a look about his story and what he has said about his game in just a few seconds.
Yeah, Rashad Weaver is an all-around defensive end. He gets the job done in the run game, the pass, when he can't get to the quarterback, gets his hands up to knock down balls. And I think
And we are back on here for the State of Football Part 195 from NFL Draft Bible on Sports Illustrated. I'm Kayla Santiago along with Alec Polito. And Alec, the first round, of course, we talked about it a little bit before in this broadcast, was just absolutely crazy. Not as many trades as we thought, but a lot of things that were very unpredictable, thinking that maybe 5 quarterbacks would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. That obviously did not happen because Justin Fields dropped all the way to 11. But now we enter the 2nd and 3rd round here. Now, of course, I think the main quarterbacks are off the board. The main receivers are off the board. It's going to be really interesting to see what teams do tonight. Which player is your favorite going into the 2nd and 3rd round?
Well, for me, it's got to be Spencer Brown. I don't know what the questions are in his game at 6'8", 302. I think that he's someone who can absolutely come in and be a dominant right tackle for you, which is where he played at Northern Iowa. But I do think he has the athleticism to potentially transfer over to a left tackle role. And I think that for me, you just don't find many guys at 6'8", over 300 pounds that run. He ran a faster 3-cone drill than a lot of running backs in this year's class, and he ran a tremendous 40 time, jumped really high. I mean, the athleticism is crazy, and he's been training like crazy, put on a ton of weight, good weight for this. I just don't see how teams could pass up on him. But I think that potentially maybe the concerns are just that he didn't play this past season, obviously, because Northern Iowa didn't have a season. And then you also talk about the potential that he hasn't gone up against top competition, but who he did go up against every day in practice was Ellerson Smith, the defensive end from Northern Iowa, and another guy who body transformation was phenomenal. Right, goes to Northern Iowa, 6'7", like 200 pounds. Now he's 265, looks like a Superman build. And he's someone in that 4-3 defensive end role could be a tremendous player. He's got the power moves. He's got the speed and bend. I think that he's someone who showed at the Senior Bowl what he can do. So did, in my opinion, Spencer Brown. Those are two guys that aren't off the board yet. That shocked me. We talked about Javonte Williams. Samuel Cosme, the Texas tackle, is a little bit shocking as well to me. And the corner of Fatu Melifonwu, really, I thought he was going to end up going first round just because of at 6'2", 200 pounds, and then the arm length at 32-inch arms, plus the press man technique that he possesses. He's your prototypical press man corner in the NFL with the physicality, with the movement skills. I think he doesn't go just because of his brother didn't really work out all that well in the NFL so far, but his brother was also overdrafted because of his athleticism. Fatu Melifonwu is just a solid player, and I really thought he was going to be off the board by now. There's so many players that I could talk about here, but those are a couple that have really shocked me that they're still on the board.
Yeah, I actually had Spencer Brown in my mock draft going in the first round. Now, I definitely see, why he could possibly drop to second. Of course, I think he could have gone in that first round, but he will most likely go early second round unless there's something that we don't know, unless there's a nagging injury or something. We don't know any of that stuff, and we're behind the scenes of that situation, but I'd be shocked if he, in any possible way, slipped to the third round. I think for me, it has to be the linebacker out of Missouri, and that is Nick Bolton. I was a little bit surprised. I said it a little bit earlier in the broadcast that Joe Tryon went before him. Now, I get it. Nick Bolton's a little bit more inside. Joe Tryon is an outside linebacker, a piece that, the Buccaneers really could enhance their defense. But I just think Nick Bolton's versatility, has athleticism. I'm a little bit surprised that he dropped to the second round, and I don't see him going much further than the top 10 picks in the second round as well.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Bolton's your prototypical Mike in the league. Excellent run defender that's going to be able to come in and play the gaps for you and really play that middle linebacker role at a high level. I think that he is someone who absolutely had first-round capabilities at that middle linebacker position. I do think that, Joe Tryon is an outside linebacker who's going to rush the passer for you. So it might have made a little bit more sense for Tampa Bay, who's got Devin Bush and Levante David there already. But I think that Nick Bolton, to me, I was shocked that he made it out of the first round. And you talk about teams with inside linebacker needs. I think the Jaguars could potentially use an inside linebacker. Now, that would be dependent on them going defense, which they might not do. But if they do, they need an inside linebacker. I think that the Jets, I mean, they have CJ Mosley, but he hasn't played in 2 seasons. They might need an inside linebacker. There's going to be early and often with teams that are going to need it, but I just don't know where he can. I don't think he can drop very far. I also didn't think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah could get out of the first round. And for me, this one's just shocking because I think he was like my 12th player on my board. And now we're sitting there at pick 33. If you're the Jaguars, it's got to be really tempting to take him. I mean, the Jaguars showed last year they do love athletic players on that defense, and maybe none more so than the versatile Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah being able to move at that size like he does. I think that he could be definitely in the conversation for them or the Jets potentially.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting to see these draft picks kind of fall and then also see some guys that went in the first round. We talked a little bit before about Alex Leatherwood. Now, I definitely did not have him in the first round in my mock draft at least. And, so I didn't have Peyton Turner or Eric Stokes in my round 1 drafts either. And I think, listen, obviously these are good players. The team see the potential. The team see that they could really fit their scheme one way or another. So I'm not downing them by any means. But it's surprising when you have guys that you thought were definitely going to be off the board in the first round drop into the second. And then guys that you could have seen go second or third round that end up making the first. Of course, I'm sure that's a dream come true. But, just a little bit shocked on night 1. But that is the beauty of the NFL draft because it is so unpredictable.
Yeah, and Eric Stokes, I actually really love that pick for Green Bay. I'm glad that they didn't fall into the trap of, although Terrace Marshall would have been excellent value for them, I'm glad that they did not fall into the trap of saying we have to take a wide receiver because of the fan base. And I understand, listen, we all heard the rumors yesterday. Then the GM comes out and says we are not trading Aaron Rodgers. Now, could that be to try and get more out of teams? It could be, but I really don't think it's in their plans to trade Aaron Rodgers. I do think they like Jordan Love. I loved Jordan Love when he came out last season. I thought that was an excellent pick for them. Now that's going to be a hot take, I'm sure, but I really still do think that's a great pick. You can talk about having Brett Favre for 16 years, Aaron Rodgers for 16 plus years, and then Jordan Love for another 15 if it works out. That's 45 years of quarterback play where some teams have yet to figure it out. You know, the Bears, your longtime rival, has yet to figure out the quarterback position. You might have 40-something years of really good quarterback play, not to mention Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers being two of the best that have ever done it. So I think personally this was a smart move. I get why Aaron Rodgers is upset, but it made sense for them. We all forget Aaron Rodgers had a decline year that year, and you can argue that it was because of his weapons, but he declined pretty big time last year. Comes back this year with a chip on his shoulder, wins MVP, but no one was really anticipating Aaron Rodgers to win MVP this year. I mean, I guess there was some predictions on it, but he was declining. So I think that they did right. And then Eric Stokes is going to fit beautifully on the other side of Jair Alexander.
Yeah, and some other things I just want to mention. Of course, Aaron Rodgers, the rumors going around, could be to try and solidify that our draft picks to call up, say, oh, Aaron Rodgers might be available. But the Panthers actually were interested in Justin Fields last night, and I think that is the most interesting thing. Now, we know they have Sam Darnold last night, but they made this move this morning. They ended up giving Sam Darnold the 5th-year option. So he is their guy, and that makes a lot of sense why Justin Fields maybe did drop a little bit more than expected. I didn't think the Panthers were going to take Fields. I thought, they were going to stick with Sam Darnold. But it's interesting that they were thinking about Justin Fields, right, but now they're going to take Sam Darnold. Alec, do you think that's a mistake?
Here's the thing with Sam Darnold is he has not, since his days at USC, he has not been given a real opportunity to succeed. At USC, he had no offensive line and not great weapons. With the New York Jets, he also didn't have a great offensive line and didn't have great weapons. So he has not been able to given a chance to succeed. What we saw in his tape when he was at USC was really phenomenal, and he's shown some abilities and definitely shown some really nice throws and really nice decisions in the league. Now, everyone talks about the seeing ghosts comment, but that is actually just a term in football when a guy drops off of blitz coverage and he drops off from the blitz into coverage. It's just a term that they use in football. It just so happens that they catch the soundbite, and yeah, he's been made fun of for it. I get it. He also hasn't been able to stay healthy, but I think if given the weapons, and now you're talking about DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Christian McCaffrey there, plus an okay offensive line, certainly not great yet. They'll be able to fix it up a little bit today, but at least I hope they will. But I think that it's a way better situation for him, and I think that's something that Sam could absolutely succeed there. When they got up at pick 8 and Justin Fields is still on the board, I thought there was a definite chance they could have done it and then moved Sam Darnold later on for something similar to the value, because his value hasn't depreciated that much since the Jets traded him. But I do think that it was the right call for them to stay with Darnold. I say that I think that Justin Fields is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold, but I do think it's the right call because J.C. Horn is a phenomenal player that they picked up. He's going to be the corner 1 for them. Dante Jackson on the other side is a nice corner 2. And now you got Jeremy Chin and really solid players on this defense where we could see this being one of the better defenses going into the NFL next year. And if Sam Darnold can play efficiently and consistently, Panthers could be a sleeper team to make the playoffs.
They definitely have a lot of potential on the defensive end. Now, I do think if I'm the general manager of the Panthers, if Justin Fields is still on the board at 8, I'm sorry, Sam Darnold, but I got to take Justin Fields. I got to gamble right there because, listen, Justin Fields is a phenomenal talent. I don't even know how he drops. I don't know what the talk was. I don't understand why these teams all of a sudden were so high on him, and then you barely even heard about Justin Fields going in really when he got closer to the draft. Now, on the flip side of that, I do agree with you that Sam Darnold really didn't get a chance. He got injuries because his offensive line was horrible. Yeah. Absolutely no protection. He had 0 weapons. He was in a jet system. I'm going to say this. I'm sorry if you're listening and watching and you're Jets fans. That was horrible, okay? That was horrible for Sam Darnold. And I think that this is a chance for him to show if he can be good in this league. We see that little sidearm throw that he was able to do, trying to mimic Patrick Mahomes a little bit there. We're going to see if he can do well on the Carolina Panthers. Justin Fields, I think, is definitely the better quarterback. But Sam Darnold, does he deserve a chance? we're going to be able to find out, especially this season. Now, we have a fun guest coming on with us. We had him a little bit earlier. I believe it was either last week or a few weeks ago. One of the NFL draft prospects, a wide receiver out of Western Colorado. James Bryant is on with us this morning. James, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me. How you doing today?
Doing great. We appreciate you coming back on to talk with us because I really enjoyed our first interview. How is the week been for you so far leading up to this weekend?
It's been pretty good. I feel like it's now it's a big mental game. You gotta stay level-headed, and for me, the thing that helps the most is just to continue to grind. Continue going to the field, continue in the weight room, and just continue doing what I can do while I wait to see if I get that opportunity.
Yeah, I was able to talk to you, James, last night, trying to just confirm this interview time. And we're, of course, doing live coverage of the draft. And it's like 10 o'clock and he is on the field working, getting ready. Yeah. So that's definitely shows, the physicality and the physical aspect that you are putting into this weekend. But I want to go back to that point you made about the mental game a little bit. How are you able to kind of set back, relax your mind? I know you say manifestation is something you use a lot, but in this process right now, how are you mentally going through it?
Mostly just like you said, manifesting and praying, and just continue to doing what I'm doing on the field, in the weight room, and make sure I'm holding on my end because at this point it's out of my hands. It's not my decision what happens next. All I can do is continue to grind. So I just gotta put it in God's hands.
Of course, and we did talk about that last time we talked, how this is something that you can't control, and you just got to kind of enjoy the process and that you're going through here. Though it may be stressful, it's still exciting, I'm sure, for you. But have you had any conversations with teams since last time we talked?
No, I have not. Not since last time we talked. It's just been quiet on my end. So, it kind of gets a little nerve-wracking and you get a little nervous, but just got to stay positive about everything.
And, we've talked before about later draft picks and undrafted picks that have absolutely made an impact on this league. I mean, the best quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, was drafted in the 6th round. You talk about Corey Clement, who went undrafted and actually had a huge impact on that Super Bowl 52 team. We actually got to talk to a linebacker earlier, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer and St. Louis Ram Cameron Lynch, who also went undrafted. And he kind of gave some advice in this sense. When you go undrafted, you get to pick your team. You get to assign to a team. You kind of control your destiny in a way. Now, if you get drafted 6th or 7th round, you're going to a team, you're going to a city, which of course, I'm sure for any player in this process is definitely amazing just to get drafted by a team. But where are you at right now? What are you looking forward to most this weekend? Of course, I'm sure it's a very high stress weekend, but what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to going in wherever I get the opportunity at and proving myself. I've always had that chip on my shoulder, and I'm going to continue to have that chip on my shoulder, and I'm just ready to prove any doubters wrong, and prove that whoever does take a chance on me, they made the right decision, I just want to be able to show my worth and show that I belong in this league.
Yeah, that's a great mindset to go into it with. And wondering for you, have you had any plans to watch the event with family or friends, or are you kind of just solo on this?
Yeah, I'm still up here in my college town in Gunnison. I have my girlfriend up here, and my 2 dogs. But other than that, I'm pretty solo. And I don't really have a problem with that. I would love to be back home with my family and everything right now, but under the circumstances, I had to stay out here during this time. But I know they're with me no matter what. They call me and they text me all the time. We're always conversating, so it's not a big deal.
Of course, when you talk about, you've been working on your game, you've been at the field almost every single day. So is there something that you're specifically working to try to improve on, or something that you are really working out right now to have teams kind of look at?
One thing, I just want to continue to get better. I feel like I've excelled in certain areas, and there's some areas I feel like I've lacked in. So I'm trying to work towards those areas. And every scout or anybody I've talked to, they see me as a scout, as a slot guy in the league, which I do as well. And here at Western, I was more of an outside guy. So I'm just trying to get back to those slot routes that I was playing with over at Charleston. Just getting back into how to get my routes right in the slot and how to get better. I'm just I take a lot from, some social media, watching Jarvis Landry, and I watch Stephon Diggs a lot, and Keenan Allen. I watch their workout tape that they do, the drills they do, and I try to imitate those to excel my game as well.
Yeah, have you focused a ton on the release aspect and the hand usage early? I know the slot, though, those are two things that teams tend to look for, is having excellent hand usage and quick releases in the feet.
Yeah, definitely. I want to be better in that aspect, because I know now, in the league, I'll have those those bigger body linebackers sometimes over top of me, and they'll make it kind of difficult to get around them. They'll reroute pretty heavy, so I want to be able to get past them with no problem. I don't want to get hung up on any of my routes. I just want to be that, I want to be that guy that wherever I go, my quarterback can count on me to do my job and get open, and somebody that he knows I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be at on that play.
And once again, we're here with James Bryant, the wide receiver out of Western Colorado. And James, we kind of talked about this last time you were on with us, but for the people just tuning in right now, what separates you from other wide receivers that are also prospects in this draft?
Definitely my story, my underdog story, where I come from, starting out with no offers out of high school, ended up taking a track scholarship over at Charleston, walking on the football team there. Yeah, ended up transferring over here to Western. I just got one of those crazy stories that where a lot of people would have folded in my position or gave up, and I just never did. And I've worked my whole life for this opportunity, and I'm just happy to see what happens next.
Yeah, and again, we appreciate you joining on with us, and I'm really excited to see your journey in the league. I'm glad that we've gotten to talk multiple times. Any chance that you'd want to come back on with us after you find your home next week or this weekend?
Definitely, of course. I would love to, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. And real quick, before we kind of sign you off here, would any of your dogs make the trip with you wherever you go?
Yeah, you guys can probably hear one of them right now. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, we're cheering you on.
Yeah, they would both go with me. One's 2, and the one you guys hear, I'm sorry about that. She's 6 weeks old now. My dog just had her 6 weeks ago, so she's a little upset right now. I'm not letting her in the room.
That's all right. I mean, it happens. I think this is the first time since I've been streaming that my dog hasn't barked in the background because she's not here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, James. Once again, the wide receiver out of Western Colorado, a 2021 NFL draft prospect. We wish you the best of luck. We're excited to see where your journey goes. And thank you so much once again for coming on this morning.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Once again, wide receiver James Bryant out of Western Colorado. We are going to debrief the second round a little bit, kind of bring up some stories that we have found upon us, some draft picks that have made history, especially with schools going on. But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back on the State of Football Part 195 right after this.
Choose Stockton and see through a new lens.
Choose Stockton and focus your energy.
Choose Stockton and write your own story.
At Stockton University, the choices are unlimited. Choose to soar. Choose to be an Osprey. Choose Stockton.
Choose Stockton for a healthier tomorrow.
Choose Stockton to help those who need it most.
Choose Stockton.
This coffee is hitting.
Mm-hmm. My head was pounding.
I'm the guy that every draft you have this story of a guy. You think about Tom Brady getting picked in the late rounds. All the guys that go undrafted free agent. You're thinking about Austin Eckler that came out of Western Colorado. He was undrafted free agent. I'm that type of guy that you're going to get on your team. I may not be high on the radar. I might not be crazy stat line from college, but I'm that guy that's going to have that longevity on your team and do whatever it takes to help that team win. Of the passion and the love I have for the game, I'm not looking to see what I can get out of football. I'm not in it for the money. I'm not in it for the fame. I'm in it for the love and the passion, and I show that on the field with my playmaking ability. I feel like that's my best attribute on the field. The ball's thrown my way. I'm gonna find a way to, come down with it. And I feel like I've shown that in my highlights as well. It's not a lot of receivers this year with 10-inch hands as well. I got pretty big hands. They measure me out at 10 inches flat. So I feel like that's definitely my best attribute, my hands and my playmaking ability and just my love and passion for the game.
We talked about a lot already anyways. Probably a good point to get. We're getting all the sponsors in now.
And we are on the State of Football, part 195 on Sports Illustrated with NFL Draft by Blanquela Santiago, along with Alec Polito. And of course, we've been breaking down round one of the draft, getting excited for round 2 and 3 all morning long. But some college teams did kind of make history, if I guess I can say here. Alabama became the first school in Common Draft era to have 5 offensive players selected in the first round of a single draft. And Alec, tell us who those guys are.
Yeah, well, first when I saw that report, I was thinking to myself, well, who was the 5th? Because it was clear that we were going to see Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Devonta Smith, and Jalen Waddle go. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't remember having a 5th Alabama offensive player in that first. And then I forgot the most surprising pick of the draft. Alex Leatherwood goes pick 17. So those are the 5 right there. And I think the first 4 absolutely deserving of first round hype and first round pick, or being a first round pick, I should say. But Alex Leatherwood really did shock me on that one. And it's funny because I definitely don't think anyone was anticipating it.
Yeah, if anybody has Alex Leatherwood in their mock draft, if they had it before round 1 started, once again, go to the casino and go gamble, because obviously you know more than we do for that perspective. But, it's interesting to see. We know Alabama, Nick Saban, such a good football program, goes to the national championships almost every single year at this point. I mean, it's always Alabama, it seems like it now. But it's definitely a surprise with Alex Leatherwood. I think, Devonta Smith, he was a definite. I think, in my opinion, it was just depending on where he would go. I thought he might actually drop to 12, where the Philadelphia Eagles were at, essentially, and be there. But it looked like teams wanted him, and that's why the Eagles moved up to 10. They got their guy. Now he's going to reunite with Jalen Hurts. Najee Harris, I think, is a good addition to the Pittsburgh Steelers as well, especially, James Conner on the outs. It's interesting to see how round 1 went. But before we kind of transition to round 2 and 3 here, what were your biggest surprises about round 1? We talked about Alex Leatherwood. Would you like to have seen more trades during round 1? And what did you like most? Which team do you think really won the lottery here?
I mean, I think that if you look at Detroit sitting there at pick 7 and taking Penei Sewell is obviously a win for them. I think that trades-wise, I was fine with what we had. I think that it was smart, the teams that moved up and moved back. It made sense. I think that I thought there might be a little bit of movement at the end of the first round, but we ended up not seeing a ton of that either. Potentially teams trying to get back up into the first to get another player. I thought maybe we might see the Jets even try and move back up again into the first round to get that running back in Javonte Williams, but now they might just sit there and take him at 34. So I guess kudos to Joe Douglas and the entire staff. Or maybe they go with another player, but kudos to not moving up and waiting for their player, because there's going to be a tremendous amount there. But I definitely think that it was interesting that Jalen Waddle goes pick 6, and now I loved it. I love Jalen Waddle. As long as Jamar Chase went 1, Jalen Waddle was number 2 for me at the wide receiver position, and I think he's really being underrated because of that injury. But if you talk about what he was doing at Alabama before the injury, it was some phenomenal stuff. He was outperforming Devonta Smith, and Devonta Smith goes on to win the Heisman, deservedly so, of course, and the Eagles did get themselves a great player as well, who's going to be – forget about the size. He is someone who's an excellent route runner, technician with his feet, physical for the size for sure. And when you talk about a 166-pound wide receiver, you're not talking about a guy who's this physical, and he is. But I think that he is going to be an excellent addition for them. But back to the Jalen Waddle pick, I mean, I think it's the closest thing this league has seen to a Tyreek Hill. Now, I'm not saying he's Tyreek Hill because it's unfair to put on the player who's just being drafted, but I think it's the closest thing to what he is. I mean, shorter build, but the speed is ridiculous. And then it's not just straight line speed. It's just quickness in his cuts. He's going to be someone who I think Tua can really lean on, and he'll be that number 1 there that they really desperately needed for Tua. But it's interesting that they go up from, they were at 12 when they made the trade. They go back up to 6. Obviously for someone. They had someone in mind, or at least a range of players. For me, then, that probably means it was Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, and then Jalen Waddle for them. Those are the 3 that they were comfortable with, because they moved up. Penei Sewell was still on the board. Rashawn Slater was still on the board. And they decided to go with the receiver. And I do love it. But I think that's probably what they were looking for from the start.
Yeah, I was always all in on the Miami Dolphins getting a receiver. Now, I did think that maybe Jamar Chase would drop to 6, because I thought the best fit for the Cincinnati Bengals would be the offensive lineman Penei Sewell, for the pure fact that Joe Burrow, he needs protection, especially coming off an ACL injury. But I think, the best receiver available after Jamar Chase, and then, of course, the tight end Kyle Pitts goes at 4 to the Falcons, Jalen Waddle. And I'm not surprised about it. I think once Jamar Chase is off the board, you need to get Tua some help. He's going to be in his second year, most likely his second full year. No more Fitzpatrick to back him up. He needs some weapons, and what better weapon to get than Jalen Waddle? I think that's really awesome as well. And, some other picks that I really think hit the mark, the Chicago Bears moving up for Justin Fields.
Yeah.
I think that is huge, because Andy Dalton is not their quarterback of the future. I'm sorry, but he is just not. Mitch Trubisky, no longer there, was not their quarterback of the future. And I think that for the Chicago Bears, Justin Fields is this phenomenal talent. He drops to 11. You make the smart move to go up and get him. Now you have your quarterback of the future, essentially. Now, of course, we've never seen these guys play in an NFL game. It can all change once they actually get on that field. But Justin Fields, now you can work around him. Now you have other players saying, oh, maybe Chicago is a destination that I would like to go to, because they actually have a chance now with the guy under center. And I think, we've seen it with Tom Brady, not comparing them at all. Gronk literally coming out of retirement for him, Antonio Brown going to the Buccaneers as well. I think you're going to see some guys wanting to go on this Bears team, because they still have a decent defense. It's not great. They still have a decent defense. And with Justin Fields in the pocket at quarterback, I think a lot of teams and other players may look at that and say, maybe this is a chance we can contend now.
Yeah, and I do definitely want to talk about the Justin Fields pick. But if you watched our coverage last night, you saw our reactions to that, and you also saw one of our excellent sponsors, Manscaped. If you're looking for your grooming needs, the Performance Package has it all for you. Get 20% off and free shipping with code MANUP21 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code MANUP21. It's time you turn your team in your pants around with Manscaped. But they definitely gave it's a great deal with the Performance Package that gives you pretty much everything that you could need. So make sure you go check that out. Back to the Justin Fields pick here. I think you're right. He's a culture builder. I think that the aspect that he's not a worker is ridiculous. He changes his diet to he's apparently a vegetarian in the off season, or I'm sorry, in season during football to keep and maintain his weight where he wants it. I mean, that's a dedication to the game that he's possessed. I think is no question. He's been working like crazy since the Elite 11, where he actually beat Trevor Lawrence in the Elite 11. And now I'm not saying he's better than Trevor Lawrence, but I certainly think he's a very good quarterback that is getting completely underrated. The fact that he went to 11, in my opinion, is disrespectful. I do, and it's not. I'm not hitting on any teams here. I think,
but it's disrespectful.
And I hope that he takes it in the right way. Like, he is a really good player that really shouldn't have been there at pick 11, and I'm very happy he fell to pick 11. I almost wanted my Giants to take him, but because the Giants were able to move back and acquire assets. And I think Chicago was really happy as well, because the price tag to move up to 7 or 8 was going to be probably way too much for Chicago to handle. 11, way more doable, giving up a first next year and a fourth next year, but also a fifth this year. I don't think that's too bad of a price tag to get up and get your quarterback of the future. And like we talked about before, Chicago has yet to figure out this quarterback position. I think they just did. And I think Justin Fields is going to be a Cam Newton-esque player for them.
Yeah, don't think about it, know it, because they just did get their quarterback of the future. And I think same thing with the Eagles. You know, the Eagles, I didn't want them to take a quarterback, you know, being from around this area. But when Justin Fields was on the board, I was like, listen, if Howie Roseman takes Justin Fields, I wouldn't be mad about it. Now it looks like they do believe in Jalen Hurts. You get an awesome asset in Devontae Smith. Now, Alec, a lot of talented players here, a lot of college talent that's going to be transitioning into the NFL. Pick one player on this board that is the player of the future.
On the first round board,
yes.
You're talking about? For me, I think the surefire Hall of Fame player from this board at this moment, of course, there's a lot that could happen, is Kyle Pitts, the tight end who goes number 4 overall. Last night, I think Russ Landy said this was the highest a tight end had gone, or maybe it was Howard Balzer who said it. And it's true. The tight end position has become valuable in the NFL for sure, as you see George Kittle getting money and Travis Kelce getting money, but it's not as valuable as other positions. And Kyle Pitts, to me, comes in and is an immediate impact player and potential Hall of Famer. I love the fit in Atlanta. I mean, you talk about what he was able to do with Jonnu Smith, Arthur Smith, that is, with Jonnu Smith. Now he brings in Kyle Pitts, who no disrespect at all to Jonnu Smith, who's a phenomenal player in this league. Kyle Pitts is a different breed at that tight end position. So I think as long as the fit stays there, and as long as his quarterback position doesn't, unfortunately we see great players sometimes be left behind because their quarterback isn't great. As long as the quarterback position is solidified in Atlanta, Kyle Pitts is going to be a tremendous player and potential gold jacket player.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good pick, especially because there's only so many good tight ends in the league right now. Of course, you have George Kittle, you also have Travis Kelce, and then Gronk making a comeback, not the Gronk that he used to be, but still a name you have to put out there. I'm actually going to say Justin Fields. Now, I know that's crazy considering Trevor Lawrence was on the board, but I do truly think that Justin Fields is an underrated player. I don't know how, and I don't know why, but for some reasons, these teams are essentially sleeping on him, and I don't understand why. I think he's a phenomenal talent. I think his arm is great, and I think if he gets a speedy receiver on that team, it's game over for a lot of people. So I think that Justin Fields, in my opinion, I think he's the quarterback of the future. All of these guys are great. Of course, they went in the first round. They all have great futures in the NFL. But if I had to pick just one, it is Justin Fields.
Yeah, and what's interesting to talk about there is the fantasy side of this, which we've got one of our fantasy guys here, Matt Hicks, to really join with us, and he's going to transition to the next show. And we appreciate everyone tuning in for the show this morning. But Matt, thanks for joining us and getting ready for your show here. Can you give us just real quick before we get off and let you take over, just one guy who went in the first round who was just you were very happy about for the fantasy aspect?
It's got to be well, first off, thanks for welcoming me in. I'm excited to kick off with Skip here the next 3 hours of coverage. But the most exciting one, it's got to be Jalen Waddle to Miami, right? It's huge for Jalen Waddle in terms of volume, which we always look for fantasy football, but it's huge for Tua as well. So a huge win-win there. Coming in at 6, it did not surprise me. I thought he could have been wide receiver 1 off the board, so he goes quickly as wide receiver 2. I absolutely love it. I cannot wait to see them paired up together in Miami.
Yeah, and I would have to agree with you there. I think a lot of teams, when they're making their fantasy rosters, you have to put Tua in there. You have to put Jalen Waddle. I think wherever you're at might be good because Tua's game is going to develop while having a wide receiver 1 in Jalen Waddle. So I think that's a fantastic pick, especially for fantasy when they start bringing their rosters up.
Absolutely. And Matt, we'll let you take over here and we'll give you guys your 3 hours of excellent coverage. And we got 15 hours all day. We've got 2 down, 13 more to go. Excited to hear the show, Matt. Thanks for having us on with you for a couple minutes here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for kicking it off for us this morning.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and transition here to the fantasy hours, I should say, here today. Skip, my man, a lot has happened since we last chatted yesterday afternoon. So we have a lot to talk about on today's show. We're going to be bringing in a variety of guests, both in terms of analysts on the NFL Draft Bible team, on our Devy and Dynasty coverage teams, and on top of that, Michael Fabiano will be joining us again today, and I think that is going to be very interesting based on the conversations that we had yesterday. But Skip, I mean, first and foremost, how you feeling? Did you get some sleep? Were you up all night? Are you ready for day 2?
I'm excited. I am very excited for day 2. I think this is the best day of the draft. Now that we finally have some landing spots to talk about, we've got round 1 in the books. So we can talk about that. Then you've got all the guys that fell out of round 1 that you thought were good chance to go. So we have that discussion. Where are they going to go? Are they going to get sniped up early in round 2? Or are they going to continue to slide? You've got the draft itself today with not 1 but 2 rounds. So double the pleasure on that. And then the time speeds up a little bit, right? We don't have to wait quite as long for each pick. So it's just a lot more to get into, and it's my favorite. It's my favorite night. It's Friday night. Most people don't have to work Saturday, so feeling a little looser. It's just I'm excited. I'm pumped. It was a great first round, and I am excited for these three hours with you, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we're going to get into all the details here over the next couple hours. We're going to settle in and be probably chopping it up about a lot of players here. But I will say, I was going through my rankings and updating my season projections last night at like 1 a.m. after everybody was done getting drafted. And I did not notice, guys moved up and down in my scoring system a little bit, but I noticed there wasn't a ton of movement. Because a lot of the picks for me, there wasn't anybody that really fell too far out of range that I expected, right? But day 2 is when things get wild. And that is when, for fantasy football purposes, it's probably the most significant day because that's when guys get made as impact players. I mean, think about it, Skip. Heading into day 2 last year, we didn't know where DeAndre Swift was going. We didn't know where J.K. Dobbins was going, Cam Akers, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, a lot of these guys that ended up being quick impact players for rookie purposes this past season, we didn't know where they were going yet heading into day 2. And there are a ton of those guys, Skip, that are going to go, I think, early round 2, but also some guys, when we're talking about draft capital and fantasy football impact, the guys who slide into the back end of day 2 instead of going round 3 tend to be real risers in rookie ADP in your rookie drafts. So that is going to be critical as well. So whether we were talking about the front end of the set of day 2 or the back end of day 2, it's going to be jam-packed with important selections.
Yeah, you brought up a lot of players, and that was a great point about last year because there were a lot of impact fantasy guys taken on day 2, and we're going to see more of that today. And I think the common thing is, we like to mock up round 1, and we put these guys where we think they're going to go, or maybe in my case sometimes where we want them to go, best landing spot, right, for fantasy purposes, and it doesn't happen. Well, then they go in and they grab a guy in round 2 that fell. So, for example, we talked yesterday about the Detroit Lions being a great landing spot for a wide receiver. They have Penny Sewell fall right into their lap, which they looked ecstatic about on the videos during the live draft last night. And now they're sitting there still with that huge hole at wide receiver. They could very easily take one, with the 41st pick overall at number 9. In the second round. So I think that's a great opportunity. And Jacksonville sitting with the first pick, they've obviously got defensive needs, but do they want to grab a potential pass catcher there? So a lot of fun seeing, where do these guys land and how is that going to impact fantasy football, especially in our rookie drafts for Dynasty?
Yeah, I cannot wait to get into it, Skip. So what we're going to do here in a second, we're going to welcome in Ryan Searfoss, who's going to be hosting with us as well. But I believe before we bring in Ryan, we're going to quickly hear from our sponsors.
Choose Stockton and see through a new lens.
Choose Stockton and focus your energy.
Choose Stockton and write your own story.
At Stockton University, the choices are unlimited. Choose to soar. Choose to be an osprey. Choose Stockton.
All right, here with the first pick in the 2021 men's grooming draft. Skip, we are selecting Manscaped, the leaders in below the waist grooming. It looks like Mel Kiper gave this one an A+ because this pick is a major upgrade for that Bush defense. For all of our NFL draft fans, we have an exclusive 20% off promo code, and it's at manscaped.com. The promo code is, sorry, allergies getting to me here, but the reason why Manscaped is the #1 guaranteed pick is because of the Performance Package. It is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Inside the Performance Package, Skip, we're going to find products like liquid formulations that have been developed to turn your bathroom into a salon. This package also includes the Weed Whacker nose and ears trimmer. I can confidently say this is the best tool on the market when you're trying to tackle those nose and ear hairs. Imagine showing up to your post-quarantine date with some nose popping out. Not the best look, fellas. Their Performance Package comes with a Performance Boxer Briefs travel bag for you to use when you're done quarantining, and some liquid formulations like the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver. The Crop Preserver is anti-chafing ball deodorant that ensures that your balls smell amazing. The ladies in your life will love this. The Crop Reviver is a spray-on toner. Yep, you heard that right. It's made with soothing aloe and witch hazel extracts that will make your balls feel like Tom Brady after a little avocado tequila. For a limited time, buyers of the Performance Package receives not 1 but 2 free gifts: the Shed Travel Bag, $39 value, and the patented high-performance anti-chafing Manscaped Boxer Briefs. You can support this show and get 20% off here with the promo code MANUP21. That's MANUP21 at manscaped.com. They also have a ton of other amazing men's hygiene products on their website. with that being said here, let's go ahead and bring on Ryan Searfoss. Ryan, you're rocking the Florida State jersey. Our Baltimore Ravens had 2 picks last night. Before we get into it, how you feeling?
Great, man. I mean, it took me a while to come around on the second pick. I wasn't mentally prepared for that because I wanted Aziz Al-Jari. But I love the Bateman pick. I've wanted him for a long time. I know we kind of disagree on that, but I feel great, man. It was fun. It was a fun first round of the draft. Lot of fantasy implications.
Well, we'll have time to get into that, but why don't we? I mean, I feel like we got to just jump into it here. We've been kind of beating around the bush. That was not a Manscaped joke, by the way. We already did that ad read.
Oh, I see.
But let's stop beating around the bush here, and let's get into some of these landing spots now. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson. Nothing surprising here. But Skip, we talked about this yesterday on the show when it came to the quarterback position. Was it going to be Mac Jones for San Francisco? Was it going to be Trey Lance? And I had said that I won't believe it's Mac Jones until Roger Goodell reads the name, and that it looks like it was all a smokescreen. Trey Lance was the selection there for San Francisco. We moved down the board a little bit. Justin Fields takes a little bit of a free fall down to 11 when the Chicago Bears trade up to take him. And then Mac Jones falls to the New England Patriots, who didn't have to move from 15, and they still get to select their rookie quarterback. So, gentlemen, when we're looking at these 3 landing spots here between specifically Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones, how do we feel about where these guys landed? And is there any immediate reaction for you, a winner right off the bat with their landing spot?
I really like the Justin Fields landing spot. I don't think anybody expected it, but they have a good run game. They have a decent enough line. They have Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney showed out. I like Cole Kmet. Anthony Miller has some potential. I know a lot of people don't like him that much, but it's a very good offense for him. And I think he can put up a ton of fantasy points. And that division is there for the taking. So I did his projection this morning. I have him at 466 rushing yards and 3,500 passing, which probably could go down a little bit, but there's a lot of weapons there for him. He's in a position where he can succeed.
Yeah, I agree with Fields. Thinking specifically about him, it seems like the instant reaction was dread, for at least from what I saw out there from fantasy football players. But I went in, and my immediate reaction wasn't dread. I actually thought it was a pretty good landing spot for a few reasons. I think about what Justin Fields can do at the college level. And I think he did a lot of things well, but he distributed the ball very well. And I actually think, at least for 2021, we're looking like he's going to have some pretty solid options to distribute to, right? I mean, Allen Robinson is a fantastic X-wide receiver. I think, other than the great Blake Bortles, this is Justin Fields, or this is Allen Robinson's best quarterback that he's ever had.
Don't even say it. That's not even a joke to make, man. That's just me.
And then you have Anthony Miller, who I know there's rumors about him potentially getting moved, but I think he's a fantastic pairing for Justin Fields over, working the underneath of the field and over the middle there. And then if you look at what Darnell Mooney was consistently able to do and how he was consistently wasted by Nick Foles' underthrown balls this past season, well, Justin Fields, one of the best parts of his evaluation is you look at his ability to be accurate in the deep third of the field, lead his receivers well downfield. I think Justin Fields is going to do very well with these weapons. And, we talk about it all the time. One of the best things for a rookie quarterback is a reliable running back there because it keeps defenses balanced. And I'm not saying David Montgomery is a top 10 running back in the league by any means, but he's a guy who can carry the ball 200 to 250 times a season and be consistent working in between those tackles. So it's going to keep defense is balanced against Justin Fields. I think he's a week 1 starter. I don't think Andy Dalton really poses a competition challenge there for him, but could potentially be a nice mentor for him. So I'm all in on the Justin Fields, despite the fact a lot of people seem to be favoring.
You talked about that Carolina landing spot all through the draft process. I don't think this is that much worse than that. It's very good. I mean, he can be right outside of QB1 range or borderline that low end.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's much worse than Carolina at all. I would have preferred the coaching there in Carolina for sure. Skip, what are your initial reactions here to Justin Fields to Chicago?
I'm more nervous than you guys are. The history of the Chicago Bears and the quarterback position is one that is tough to look past. I mean, I think the stat was they've never had a 4,000-yard passer or a guy that's thrown for 30 touchdowns. Now you can easily make the argument they've never had a talent like Justin Fields, and that can change. But we're currently relying on the staff there to develop a quarterback and put him in a situation to be successful immediately, because we're fantasy football players. We want immediate results. We're not patient.
Right.
But you do have to remember, like we talked about yesterday, Matt, that situations change. So you shouldn't really make your decision on the current staff, because for all we know, they'll be gone. And all of a sudden, for all the points you guys brought up, that's going to be an attractive spot for a new head coach if they decide to go another direction. I mean, all of a sudden you've got your franchise quarterback to develop. You've got some pieces in place. You've got a defense that's typically pretty good. So I like it from that aspect, and I need to not have that immediate gut reaction impact my rankings, because that is the first thing I thought about yesterday. When Trey Lance went 3 and Fields goes to the Bears, which I thought, by the way, was a great move by Chicago. I mean, an absolute wonderful decision by that organization, unfortunately, as a Vikings fan. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm sitting here in one league in particular at the 102 Superflex League, and I only have one quarterback. So I am taking a quarterback at 102.
Right.
And literally up until the start of that draft yesterday, it's Justin Fields. I'm not even questioning it. I like him better than all the other options I'm going to have, because there's no way Lawrence isn't going 101. And so now I'm thinking, oh man, we talked yesterday. San Francisco is an awesome landing spot for a quarterback. I mean, we really like the opportunity that Lance is going to have there to develop. He's got pieces around him as well, and it's a great system to be successful. Am I going to pivot and take Lance now at 102? And that has literally been in the back of my mind ever since the 2 picks went down. And so I'll be struggling with that. Fortunately, that draft doesn't start until May 10th. So I get an extra week to ponder on that one, and we'll see where we go. But it's a great selection to have, right? Because I love the talent on both these guys. And like you guys said, that the situations could be very beneficial for both.
Yeah, I think
trade back scenario too.
That is true.
If the guy at 103 has somebody they really want, even to get a 3rd round pick to move one spot might not be worth it if you have a hard time with the decision.
Let someone else make the decision for me.
One thing you mentioned about the 4,000-yard passer or 30 touchdowns, how they've never had that. Do we need that for Justin Fields to be a really good fantasy player because of his rushing upside? The way the league's shifting, it's
good point.
I don't think we need that.
Yeah, I think I went in and plugged in my Justin Fields projection last night. And, the big change for me with Chicago was I had to drop his touchdowns down a little bit, because I think that, look, compared to some of the other landing spots he could have been in, there was more upside there. But, to Foss's point, the rushing floor is still there. I think because Ohio State did such a good job with designed runs, Justin Fields executed those runs so well, we're underestimating a little bit his rushing ability, because it wasn't necessarily like the flashy highlights, right? He wasn't waiting for a broken pocket and scrambling and picking up 30 yards downfield. He was executing designed runs, reading options well, and just consistently picking up 8-10 yards at a time. And so, if we're relying on highlights to look at rushing upside, then we're probably not fully understanding the rushing floor that comes with Justin Fields. And Chicago, being a team that does like to have a really balanced rushing approach to their game, I do think they're going to allow Justin Fields to run the ball. probably at least 60 to 75 times in his rookie season, probably resulting in about 5 rushing touchdowns. And if you could come in as a quarterback in fantasy football with 5 rushing touchdowns, it's going to be difficult for you to not be in QB1 territory right there, because that just gives you so much of a floor.
Matt, would you have his rushing or his passing touchdowns up to go with that 5 rushing?
His, I believe I have him right now at 21 passing touchdowns.
We're dead the same right now.
Yeah,
and I had 21 passing and 5 rushing.
Yeah, and I had him 24 passing touchdowns before I had his landing spot. So I have projections for all of these guys. Just to give an idea in a neutral field.
I'm not all the way through mine yet, but he's one of the ones I did right away because his role.
So are you guys, when you're doing these projections for these rookies, especially a quarterback, are you assuming that they're starting from day one?
No, not necessarily. So Justin Fields, I do expect to be a day one starter. Yeah. And so I gave him 17 games on my projections. But for Trey Lance, for instance, I gave him 8 games. So it's going to depend a little bit. I don't think Trey Lance is a day one starter, especially it seems to me like New England. Wow. That's burned in the back of the memory. It seems like San Francisco is going to still have Jimmy Garoppolo at the end of draft weekend. And I think that just makes perfect sense with the Trey Lance pick. And they've said that from the start. San Francisco has that Jimmy G was going to be around for another year. And I think right now, if they try to move Garoppolo with the way his contract looks like and the way he's performed recently in the injuries, they're probably not getting much more than like a day 3 pick for him. If they allow him to come back, play a good season this year, even if it's only 8 to 12 games, they might be able to recoup that second-round pick for him. So I think it makes a lot of sense for San Francisco to hold on to Trey Lance. So I only gave him 8 games. But for me, Fields, Wilson, and Lawrence are all 16-game starters, 17-game starters this year.
So maybe I was gonna say maybe another strategy I have is instead of trading down to the 103, I've also got the 109 and a bunch of second-round picks. Maybe I should try to trade up from the 109 to the 103, and I'll just take both of them, and now I'm done.
I think that's the move. I mean, I absolutely think that's the move. But we're going to talk about it. The other side of that, Skip, is we're going to talk about this. We had some good landing spots for wide receivers last night. And we talked about, the value that you could get at the back end of your first round in rookie leagues at the wide receiver position. Guys like Jalen Waddle might be there, Devonta Smith. There were some nice landing spots. So I do think, you're going to have to sacrifice the ability to potentially get that. But, if you, and I got this question, all morning, in the patron chats and on Twitter, everybody is saying, Lance or Fields. And as much, I'm like, do both. If you have the opportunity, and a lot of folks do, if you're rebuilding, you've probably stocked up on picks. Move up in your Superflex leagues. Always prioritize the quarterback position as best as you can.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love some of the wide receiver landing spots as well, and I think there's a chance that you're going to see a similar, gut reaction to like we saw with Fields going to Chicago. You're going to see the same thing with Devonta Smith to Philadelphia, and people are going to be a little nervous that Philadelphia has not been successful with rookie wide receivers, lately, and they might let him slide, farther than maybe that than they should, because like we talked about yesterday too, he's got every opportunity in the world to be the wide receiver 1 on that team. I mean, there's really nobody standing in the way unless you love Jalen Reagor. I think that's a huge thing, is that he could come in day 1, be the starter and get a high target volume, and who knows, maybe that it's a new offense, it's a different situation, and that could be a lot more advantageous from a fantasy perspective than what people would predict, and he might slip down where all of a sudden you're getting a Devonta Smith late first round or early second in your rookie draft.
Yeah, it's interesting. I went in and I put in the Devonta Smith projections as well. This is like a 1 a.m. last night, so I don't know, numbers and being up past midnight. We'll see how these get tweaked here over the next couple of weeks. But Devonta Smith comes in I think he was exactly at wide receiver 36 for the first season. But and it's really only because the only hesitancy I have for Devonta Smith is what does the quarterback situation look long term? Because in terms of volume, I think I'd put him in at 18% of the market share right off the bat, and that's a number that's only probably going to move up. I'm not worried about Jalen Reagor at all. And then, are we worried about guys like Greg Ward or Travis Fulgham, who did actually outperform their rookie selection from last year, being Jalen Reagor? So that'll be a really interesting situation to feel out. But I think wide receiver 36, at least right away, is kind of his floor for me. So if you could take a wide receiver 3 at minimum at the back end of the first round, with the upside to be potentially wide receiver 2, if Jalen Hurts really kind of not only performs well in the offense, but also the volume, right? The amount of passing attempts is really going to be the key factor when we're talking about the Philadelphia offense. But I think Devonta Smith is going to be the guy soaking those up. So I'm definitely in on him. I don't want to pay a premium, but if I'm drafting, 110, 111, 112, I probably have the ability to, to stash him away with a little bit of depth too, right?
Yeah, I like the landing spot for him, but there's a lot of questions to that offense. And what does it look like? Are they really going to throw the ball enough with Jalen Hurts, who was 52% accuracy last year? He didn't have a high completion percentage. Are they going to run the ball a ton with Sanders, Scott, and just take deep shots with Smith and feed Goddard? That's where my concern is with them. I'm around 600 yards at the moment, but I think it's a landing spot that worked out well for boosting him up draft boards, because it's a lot more clear than we've seen. We saw landing spots with Waddle or with less competition, so I'm fine with that. It's just coming around to it.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I know you mentioned Jalen Hurts' lack of accuracy there. I mean, he was thrown in, at the end of the season in his defense. It's interesting. A quick pivot point, but it definitely relates to the rookie wide receivers. I tweeted out earlier this morning. I kind of made the connections here. If you look back at the 4 main fantasy quarterbacks from the 2020 draft, they all got help last night on day 1 of the NFL draft, 3 of which got wide receiver bumps. Jalen Hurts getting Devonta Smith, Tua reconnecting with Jalen Waddle, and then also Joe Burrow reconnecting with Jamar Chase. And then Justin Herbert, although he didn't get a fun weapon to throw to, he certainly got some protection there up front with the offensive line, which you also really appreciate seeing. So it's interesting that the wide receivers are not only affecting the quarterbacks, or I should say the wide receiver value of this class, but also very much affecting the quarterback value of the 2020 class.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely are. And I love I love Slater to help Herbert out, man. Cincinnati could have took some notes on protecting the quarterback. But, yeah, that was a steal. And out of all of the QB-wise, that's probably the happiest any picks made me.
If you're looking back at, to that point, Foss, if you're looking back at the 2020 rookie class, then comparing, where you would value Burrow now, Tua now, and Herbert now, where are you kind of lining these guys up in terms of your fantasy football value in a dynasty context for these quarterbacks, knowing now the extra pieces that they have?
Right now, it has to be Herbert's my one. He's performed well. He shows he can do it at this level. He has 2 quality proven receivers in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. They have a decent running game. He has Eckler to help him. They're building that offensive line. But I think that gap's closing. Burrow has unbelievable weapons. If they pick up a lineman, say Tevin Jenkins here, their 5th pick in the second round, that boosts him for me and closes that gap. And honestly, they're doing Tua's gonna be close. I think we're sleeping on Tua because that's a good receiving core.
Yeah, we sure are. Skip, where would you kind of rank those quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think I'd have to go with that same ranking. Herbert's definitely number 1. I mean, he looked the best out of all 3. Yeah. They're going to help him on the offensive line, which I will agree. I loved that from a Chargers are making a great pick and helping their quarterback out, much better than what Cincinnati did. As a Vikings fan sitting at 14, I did not love the Rashawn Slater pick at 13, but when you do the predicting of the picks as it's happening, that was one of the ones as it was happening. I was like, this is a slam dunk. There's no way they're going to pass on Slater. So I knew that was coming, but yeah, Burrow, assuming he comes back, healthy from injury. I mean, you got to love the weapons that he has there now. I mean, not super excited about all the teams that I have Tyler Boyd on. That's a little concerning, but we'll manage that. And Tua is absolutely being set up for success. I mean, he's getting every opportunity to have options, to have weapons, putting him in a position to be successful. They're giving him a familiar face, a familiar target with Waddle, which is outstanding. And I really want to see how that plays out in what they do. I mean, they've added a lot of speed into the offseason, and I wouldn't be surprised if Miami added one of these later running backs, instead of going early with a bigger name, just add another piece to the puzzle, later, so they can continue to kind of, go with the hot hand, play the rotating backs in the backfield, keep them all fresh. They proved to have a pretty effective running game last year, no matter who was carrying the ball. So that offense could be sneaky good.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I have them all. I think they're all top 15 for me. Like Herbert's sitting in probably a 5 spot. Burrow sitting around 10, and I think Tua is right outside the top 12 with the opportunity to move up overall for Dynasty.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, we're still reacting to last night's picks, and don't worry, we have plenty of time. We'll transition into taking some shots at what might happen tonight. But I think Skip's right. I don't think Miami is done. They have plenty of draft capital to continue building out that offense, and so I think Tua is only going to look better tomorrow morning compared to how he looks this morning. So I'm definitely interested to see him continue to gain momentum. I think Joe Burrow, my goodness, I think Cincinnati lucked out a little bit with some of the offensive line talent that has fallen to them. And so I really hope that's what we're seeing there. In day 2 is some intentional focus on building out the offensive line. But we will see which direction Cincinnati goes down. Why don't we go ahead and welcome in one of our analysts here joining us for our next segment, and that is Danny Mackey. And Danny, it is good to have you here. All right, looks like we're having some tech issues here with Danny, so we'll get him set up here and back in a second. But in the meantime, guys, while we're looks like we're all having tech difficulties. Are we good?
Yeah, now you're good. Yeah, you were just talking and there was no sound there.
All right, there we go. All right, so we're all having tech difficulties here. Maybe a little bit too excited about last night's draft here.
So he's running the lawnmower 3.0 in the background.
Broadcasting from his helicopter.
He's promoting Manscaped in a different way. Good job.
It's a full circle here. Danny's actually just here for ad plug, so thanks for showing up. But I was suggesting maybe we pivot, and we have a little bit more wide receiver talk to get into, but I can't bury the lead too far because we had two really exciting running backs come off the board here last night. Both who I think we nailed when in our discussions yesterday. We talked about the possibility of both Najee Harris going to Pittsburgh and Travis Etienne going to Jacksonville. But guys, I think we got to start with Travis Etienne to Jacksonville because that is the one that truly set fantasy football Twitter ablaze. The James Robinson truthers are full on tilt mode this morning. Urban Meyer came out and just poured fuel on the fire when he came out with that quote that said that Travis Etienne was a third down running back. So we are in full chaos mode when it comes to the Jacksonville backfield. So Skip, I'm interested to hear from you first. What you think of the Travis Etienne pick to Jacksonville, and how you think it's going to shake out for James Robinson and the rest of that backfield.
As a James Robinson, guy, I'm not excited about it because I don't buy for 1 second that they drafted a running back in the first round to be a third down back. That just does not equate for me whatsoever. I do buy that they would be interested in more of a split backfield, and whether that's 50-50 or 60-40, there's nothing wrong with that in today's NFL. I mean, you can get a lot of production. You keep the guys fresh. You go with the hot hand. You put them in the positions that things that they do successfully. So from an NFL standpoint, it can really lead to having a good offense. Unfortunately, from the fantasy side, it's very frustrating. You don't know which one to start until that kind of plays itself out, or unless an injury makes a decision for us. But it was it wasn't the ideal landing spot because you've got an established guy there. I mean, it was really confusing that happened. But I guess you're definitely in hold mode. I think with either one of these running backs, you have to wait to see how this plays out, because if you try to trade either one of them, people are going to offer you lowball offers because they know the situation too, and they're going to try to take advantage of it. I think the offense as a whole though is going to get better. It's a nice pick from that perspective.
I absolutely agree. I think the whole point is where I want to go here. If you didn't move James Robinson yet, it is too late. You are stuck with him because you're going to sell him for way lower than you should have. There were opportunities in the past 4 months for you to trade James Robinson for a first-round rookie pick, probably even a second-round rookie pick, and maybe some change on top of that. I think at best now you're probably getting a third or fourth for James Robinson, and it's just too late. At this point, you have to hold and hope for an injury. And none of us want to root for injuries, but it's part of fantasy football, right? So, but for me, Foss, I'm interested to hear, kind of if you've done your projection line out for Travis Etienne. He comes in at running back 24 for me, 193 PPR points in his first season. So I think he's immediately a viable running back. We'll dig into a little bit more of that why, but Foss, I'm interested to hear that, and we're going to try to, let's dig into that.
So I didn't do my projections yet, but from the standpoint of where it's sitting, I think at the end is going to see somewhere around 180 to 190 carries, like in that range, and probably catch around 30 balls. My fear is with Robinson is he's just going to become a fantasy thorn in the side and become that goal line vulture. He has all the makings of being that hammer to, when they're down low, to take away from Etienne.
But Etienne's not small. Etienne's not small, though. He can run the goal line. He's 215.
I know. And so Robinson's 219 at 5'9". He's a little bit of a hammer, too. But that's my fear of what will happen. It really is that the red zone touches are going to be torn away. And I think Carlos Hyde's going to steal one or two, too, and just it's going to be a nightmare. You said 24 for Etienne, which I'm fine with. Like, that's probably the range he's going to slot for me at the running backs.
I mean, you nailed it for me. So right now I have Travis Etienne with 55% of the rushing market share in Jacksonville. He plugs in at 192 attempts and 30 receptions. So you were spot on there with what you said off the top of the noggin. So you can tell we do a lot of projections here.
Yeah, I got the majority of the rookies. There's a few I didn't get, but yeah, but the thing is, he's Urban Meyer's guy. Urban Meyer came into a whole new team without his people, and he's building this team how he wants it. And Travis Etienne is that. Like, you don't take a running back when you have zero defense. Right. If you're not trying to build something specifically, which means he's a part of that. You can see a slow start in this season for him, which leads to a buy opportunity in Dynasty. maybe mid-season or even later. It could be a slow start right away, but he's got to be the guy there at one point or another. It's just when.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on some key points. Urban Meyer, when he came to Jacksonville, they asked him what he wanted to do. He said he wanted a fast offense. No disrespect here to James Robinson, but he's not the running back you want to feature here if you're running a fast offense. It's Travis Etienne. We've seen Urban Meyer's track record here in terms of what he does with his running backs, and he likes to have a featured running back. And I think he understands that, that doesn't work completely in the NFL. So I didn't give Travis Etienne 70% of the touches or 75 like somebody like Derrick Henry in Tennessee might get, where he is truly the running back on the roster. But I still think Etienne at 55% of the rushing share makes a ton of sense. And then when you think about rotating, when he rotates off of Travis Etienne, right? Carlos Hyde is his guy from back in his collegiate days. And that was a very intentional addition to that squad. So I'm not claiming that Carlos Hyde is going to be fantasy relevant in any way. But when you're thinking about what's left over for James Robinson, the pie's getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah. And with Etienne, he's not the type of back who needs 270 carries like Derrick Henry. He's a big play back, man. He breaks off 40-yard runs. He can survive in fantasy off of 16 carries and 3 catches. Like, that's what his game is. And we've known this the whole way through. And a 55% of the rushing market share, that's good for an NFL running back nowadays.
That is
there might be 6 running backs who are going to see over that this season. So if he gets 55%, I'm ecstatic.
I think the key for me is, what does his involvement in the passing game look like? Now, the good news is that neither James Robinson nor Carlos Hyde are necessarily pass-catching running backs, right? So it's not like they have a gadgety guy that's going to take that volume, that passing volume away. My question is just going to be, how often does Urban Meyer want to feature Travis Etienne in the passing game? That's really the only question. I think Etienne showed that he can catch the ball. And so I have him at, where am I at here? 46 targets. I think that's a pretty conservative estimate here. I also think I gave him a conservative estimate of 7 rushing touchdowns. And Foss, you mentioned James Robinson being a goal line guy. I kept him with 4 touchdowns. So those are the 2 questions for me. And that's what's going to separate Travis Etienne from being a fringe running back 2 to having running back 1 upside. Can he get those touchdowns? Can he get the passing volume?
And are we worried about game script with him? That's the other thing. This team's gonna be playing from behind,
right? And not trying to lose, like
not
James
trying
Robinson
to lose.
does.
I think it's a gift and a curse for him, because if he's involved in the passing game, it's fantastic. If he's not, we're in trouble. Like, if we see him getting a piece of the passing game and the only running back really doing that, that could be huge fantasy-wise. And we saw him pick it up late, but he wasn't really involved in the passing game. Oh, I guess, yeah, he was involved this year with Trevor Lawrence. So
yeah, that was an increase. And remember,
yes, it was an increase.
You want to talk about familiarity there. You literally brought your rookie quarterback and his running back from college. So
right.
That is a tremendous pairing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be good. And playing from behind might not be a bad thing for him.
All right, it looks like we might finally have Danny here. It looks like his tech issues may be resolved. Danny, how are we doing?
Hey, I'm good, Matt. The joys of live streaming, huh?
There it is. There he is. Well, glad to have you in here, Danny. We're talking Travis Etienne, but why don't we go ahead and pivot to Najee Harris here instead, because we're going to continue this conversation of landing spots in the running back position from last night. So, Danny, let me get your initial thoughts here on Najee Harris to Pittsburgh. It wasn't the most surprising pick, but it does seem to be a little controversial, at least what I'm seeing out there on Twitter right now.
Yeah, it really wasn't too much of a surprise. I saw it coming, and I think a lot of people saw it also coming. Like, the need was there and the talent was there. So I think he immediately walks in and could definitely become, his talent is unreal. The bell cow in Pittsburgh. And we've seen Pittsburgh running backs succeed very well. So I love it from a fantasy point of view.
Yeah, I think bell cow is the key. I mean, Skip, I'll pass it on over to you here. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what the rushing share could potentially look like. I mean, we do still have Benny Snell in Pittsburgh. We do still have Anthony McFarland in Pittsburgh. And, do either one of those guys, do you think, pose any significant threat into Najee Harris's role?
Not any whatsoever. Again, I'm going to go back to they spent a first-round pick on a running back. You don't do that unless you're planning on making him the guy. He was a lot of analysts, number one running back coming in. If he wasn't, he was number two to Etienne. So, those guys, depending on who you're asking, were 1A, 1B, right? And he was the first running back off the board. He went in the first round, and he went to a team that historically has had good running back production. I know we're a little concerned about the offensive line. They haven't been as good in recent memory as they have been, again, historically. But volume is king. And I think when Ryan talked about, only a handful of running backs are going to get over 55% of the share, I think he's one of those guys. And I love the landing spot. I mean, he's going to get the rock. They know they have to run the ball better than they did last season. I mean, the short passing, it was too much. They weren't a balanced enough offense. And, Roethlisberger just isn't quite the same, with the arm that he has been in the past. So I was a big Najee believer going into the draft. I've got him in 3 leagues already, and I could not be happier. I actually celebrated that aggressively last night when it happened. It was outstanding.
That's fantastic. I love the celebrate aggressively. Skip's a pretty even tempered person, so I want to know what aggressive Skip looks like.
Well, if you would have been there when the details of the Vikings trade down to the Jets came, you would have seen another aspect of Skip's reactions to something that he was expecting to be better than it turned out to be.
That's fantastic. Let's dig into what exactly it means when we say that Pittsburgh's offensive line is not the best. And so if you look at PFF's rankings here of the offensive line rankings for this past season, the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line unit as a whole graded out to be the 17th in the league. So that's mid-league. However, if you specifically look at their run blocking grade as a unit, it's 31st in the league. So second to last in the league this past season, according to PFF. And what you want to add on top of that is their highest graded run blocker was Alejandro Villanueva, who is now no longer with the team. So Pittsburgh has a lot of questions to figure out when it comes to the offensive line. So although I'm not really worried about Najee Harris necessarily, I think it's important to point out that there is reason to proceed with a bit of skepticism when it comes to at least the offensive line unit, and hopefully Pittsburgh invests a little bit more here in the draft with that unit. And there's always a round of veteran offensive linemen that swing around after the draft. So hopefully they can nail on a signing or two as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see them, spend some draft capital on the offensive line. I'm just kind of looking over the second round to see where they're at. They'll have to wait a little bit down there at pick 23. But, like we mentioned earlier, there are some guys that have fallen. And I think round 2 is where you typically start to see the top guards come off the board. So someone's going to be there for them that might, fit what they're looking for. So I guess that would be an early prediction where they might go to help, alleviate that concern. Because from what I'm looking at, I think they were dead last in rushing yards last season. So there is, of course, a concern with that, like you brought up, and it's a great point. But I'll take the opportunity and just assume that they're gonna fix that O-line, and maybe not immediately, but quickly.
Yeah,
they also lost Pouncey.
Yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead.
They lost Pouncey and Foster too, both retired. Like literally, their whole left side of the line is gone from the middle to the left. A bad offensive line lost its 3 best players. They have to make a move.
You're looking at 55 there. I think Skip nailed it with interior offensive line. Maybe Landon Dickerson is still available. He slides further than expected. But a guy who just screams Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line, Quinn Miners out of UW, University of Wisconsin Whitewater. I think Miners would be a perfect fit there. And 55 is just about where I think he goes. Big Division III guy who came to the Senior Bowl and just absolutely showed out. I mean, he is just an absolute a mauler along the offensive line. So I think he could be available there. Even if they wait a little bit further here in the third round, a guy like Trey Smith could be available out of Tennessee at 88, a guy who is not quite a finished product, but again, an absolute monster along the interior line. So Skip, I like your focus there on potentially addressing the guard or center position. And then, let's look to free agency here to shore up some of the tackle spots, at least for a year. One of the other things I'll point out with Najee Harris, and this could be a reflection of both not so efficient offensive line and also just Ben Roethlisberger's current arm talent as he is kind of fading into the end of his career here. But Najee Harris, and me and my draft seminar co-host John Lobb have actually screamed about this on our Najee Harris rookie profile. He's the best pass-catching running back in this class. And I think that they are going to be targeting him in the running game to help offset some of those offensive line issues, and also Ben Roethlisberger's arm. So I think what you could potentially knock Najee Harris on for efficiency in the running game, it's going to be made up for easily in the passing game, because I think, like I said, I think he's the best pass-catching running back in this class, and I think he's going to end up with a high pass-catching volume, despite the fact that he's 6'2", 230.
Yeah, if you look at the Steelers historically, I mean, you had James Conner playing 13 games at 71 targets, and James Conner's nowhere near the receiving back that Harris is. Like, the opportunity is completely there for him to be in the passing game. If I would guess, and with no line, they dump off the ball a ton in Big Ben's new quick pass offense. So he could easily see 50 to 60 targets.
Yeah, easily. Let's see. I have him penciled in here for 72 targets and a 70% catch rate.
I have 54, and I'm going to bump that up. Yeah. He came way too high in my total projections and scared me a little bit.
He's running back. He is 7 for me. I'm not backing off. He's running back 7 for me. He's right between Zeke and Chubb.
He was going to be in that range for me, and it scared me off a little bit.
It's there. I
have 248 carries too.
Yep, 220 here. And I did bump his yards. So my pre-draft projections for Najee Harris, his yards per rush was 5 yards. And I bumped him down to 4 or 5. So I'm trying to account for the offensive line in that way. But like I said, I think it's going to balance itself out. So, I think I'm still plenty excited for Najee Harris. I'm plenty excited for Travis Etienne. I thought we got some good running back landing spots day one.
What was your PPR points for him?
247.
Okay. I'm at 222. So I'm right. If I bump those receptions up, it's right there.
It's right there. Gentlemen, there were a few more wide receivers here that went off the board. We talked about the big 3 that went off the board, but there's one in particular that we definitely – I guess there's 2 in particular that we definitely have to still talk about. The first one is Kadarius Toney. And so, Danny, I don't know if living there in the city, I don't know if you could hear an uproar of agony when that pick was made. I know you're a Jets guy, but I don't know if you have a good ear to the ground here. I got to tell you, I'm confused as a Giants fan. Most of my Giants fan chats are very confused with this pick. What's your initial reaction, Danny, to, in general, the Kadarius Toney pick? And then let's maybe talk a little fantasy as well.
So the initial reaction to the pick is my mind was kind of blown because Gettleman never trades back.
Right.
He trades back, and then he took a guy who may have gone late day 2 in the middle of the first round. So it was just really confusing to watch. Personally, I think that Toney is a player who needs work. I don't believe he's that talent to step in and help them out. He's probably going to be a special teams contributor for the most part next year, I think. I just don't find him making the impact at 20 when they have so many needs, the Giants right now. And it just didn't make sense. As for how New York is taking it, they're kind of all like in a cloud of smoke, confused and wondering what's going on, was the general vibe I heard from most of my friends. And fantasy-wise, I wouldn't touch him at all for a while. I mean, he was already low on the board for me to begin with, and this didn't do anything at all to help his value in terms of landing spots.
Yeah, I was generally like really low on Kadarius Toney. Like I had him projected out pre-draft as a third-round rookie pick, and I think now it's everybody else is going to kind of come to that medium there with Kadarius Toney. Foss, it looked like you wanted to jump in there.
No, it just felt it felt like they're trying to catch lightning in the bottle with it, because they hit on somebody like OBJ, who was very elusive in the open field and underperformed in college. But
OBJ ran more than 2 routes. So
right. But I feel like that's what they were trying to do haphazardly. To his point, a lot of people like the Daniel Jeremiahs and Mel Kipers had Toney as a first-round guy.
That's true.
And there's a disconnect there. If they're thinking that, and that team and the Giants think that, that's someone you go back and look at again, because he brings something different than any other receivers there. Like, he is a guy you have to getting the ball in open field. So on a positive note, he's that. He gives them something. You have a couple possession receivers, and Galladay, he's something completely different. Like, you can manufacture touches for a guy who knows how to make guys miss open field.
It's interesting.
End of second for me?
Yeah, I mean, he is different, but is he different? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I feel about the pick. I understand it from an NFL perspective. To a degree, I still think it was a reach, especially considering some of the talented wide receivers still on the board who I think would be able to contribute. But I think this is maybe a Joe Judge pick. You know, thinking about what Joe Judge values. Danny mentioned he could be a special teams contributor early. Joe Judge used to be a special teams coach there with New England. And I think it's potentially an attempt to offset some of the deficiencies that they see in Daniel Jones. And I've talked about this a lot from a Giants perspective this offseason, but Dave Gettleman is going to do everything possible to empower Daniel Jones to continue progressing in any way he can as a quarterback, because David Gettleman is very much on the hot seat, and he, in his Giants future, is married to Daniel Jones's success. Remember, it was his choice to make that selection 6th overall back in the 2018-2019 NFL draft. Sorry. And so, Dave Gettleman is really tied to that. So for me, thinking of the offense here, it seems like this is an attempt to give Daniel Jones something else, a gadget piece, keep defenses off balance. But also at that same time, is Jason Garrett going to understand how to scheme for Kadarius Toney? So it's a really interesting balance for me.
You said that about Gettleman. Isn't that the point that, like, you want your quarterback to succeed, put him in the right situation? So it's kind of doing right by him in a way.
That's what I'm saying. But yeah, I think if you think about the way, and now I will say, I think Dan Mullen as a college schemer is probably going to be considered a better at that than what the Giants are working with. But if you look at the way Kadarius Toney hid a lot of Kyle Trask's flaws, right, that we saw when Toney and Pitts weren't there for that bowl game, the way Toney hid some of Trask's flaws, maybe that's a plus for that. Maybe Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge are looking at that and saying, wow, maybe Kadarius Toney could hide some of these flaws with accuracy issues that we have with Daniel Jones.
I mean, look at, if you take, just for an example, like Jameis Winston to Sam Darnold and how they failed. Jameis Winston was put in the best situation when he had all those receivers like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and he failed on his own. Sam Darnold was in a terrible situation. So at least with Daniel Jones, if he fails, you know it's on him and not the team and not the coaching. Like, he's in that situation because of him and not being put in the best situation. So I think best case scenario in a twisted way.
But for fantasy purposes, if we're going to tie this back to, it's trash, right? It's not a good fantasy. It's not a good fantasy selection. So here is your silver lining. If you are a Kadarius Toney fan and you want to get him, first off, just don't pay more than a mid-second. I wouldn't pay a late second, but if you want to, that's the territory where you go and get your guy, right? So if you are a Florida fan and you love Kadarius Toney and you want to draft him, here's your silver lining. All right, Kadarius Toney goes to New York. They suck again because it's the Giants, and they break my heart every year. And then what happens is Dave Gettleman gets fired. They move on from Daniel Jones. They use their top 10 pick that they earned from being trash. They package that with the pick that they're going to get from Chicago to move up, and they get one of the top quarterbacks in the 2022 class. And all of a sudden, you have big man Kenny Golladay pulling defenses off of Kadarius Toney that can work over the middle. That's the best I can give you guys. That's what I can do here. But
an optimistic view. I like it.
Glass half full.
That's the most I can do. And there was just a little bit of extrapolating there, guys. I don't know if you noticed that. It might have been a little bit of a reach. Foss, I know there's a wide receiver that you've been waiting to talk about here, and that is, of course, the man that went to Baltimore. Draft Twitter favorite, Rashad Bateman, ends up being a late first-round selection, highly anticipated selection for the Baltimore Ravens. I have to be honest, it still confuses me a little bit from an NFL perspective. And I went in and I tried to tweak Rashad Bateman's projection to make it look as good as I possibly could. And I'm not excited about it. But Foss, I got to get your initial reaction from an NFL lens, and then we'll talk fantasy.
Okay. Yeah, I've been thinking about it all morning. So NFL lens, I really like it. I know you want Terrace Marshall there, and he's shrunk 2 inches per year his whole life for Bateman. But he's explosive. He's a big play receiver, which they want that in the offense. They really do. They want guys who can stretch the field. He's very aggressive getting the ball. For being only 6 foot, he goes well. He goes up and gets it well in the end zone. He tracks well. So I like from an NFL perspective, and he's different enough from what they have that it's good. And if we're looking at just the taller receiver, I think they're just trusting Mark Andrews in that role from an NFL perspective because they want versatility on that offense. Fantasy-wise, this year, I hate it. Like, there's no way I can see him putting up fantasy relevant this year. Sammy Watkins is even there now, who, if he's healthy, he's going to force targets. Hollywood Brown is going to force some targets. Mark Andrews is going to force targets. He's fourth in the pecking order at best, because when you're including J.K. Dobbins as well, on our offense, it's not passing much. Long-term, silver lining, kind of like how you did with the Giants. If that Baltimore offense doesn't improve in the passing game, Greg Roman's going to be gone, and they're going to be changed because no players, free agents going to come to Baltimore in an offense that doesn't pass, and Greg Roman's the reason for that. So if they don't improve there, he's gone. And Sammy Watkins isn't long for this world, so he's probably a short-term answer while Bateman grows. So I can see by year 2 or 3 that receiver leap that we used to believe in hitting then. But as of now, I'm not touching him redraft.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was chatting I was chatting with folks this morning and talking about what Rashad Bateman would need, and somebody mentioned, do you think we could get to 120 targets for Rashad Bateman? Because that was kind of the number they had said, like, that's probably the volume that Rashad Bateman needs. And I went back and looked here, and I have Rashad Bateman with 15% of the Baltimore market share here. And that's tied with Hollywood for 15, Mark Andrews at 20. And I only have 63 targets for Rashad Bateman. So it's about half of what the target kind of was in our conversation of where does Rashad Bateman become fantasy relevant. The challenge is that you need the volume because you're not going to get the touchdowns overall in the Baltimore scheme. And you have to keep in mind that despite the fact that Hollywood Brown has been wildly inconsistent. He has been getting touchdowns, and Mark Andrews gets touchdowns. So it's this awkward place where there's not a ton of volume despite the wide receiver need, and there's also not a ton of touchdown production available.
It's hard, man, because they're going to run the ball a ton. Like, the team's built to run. They're going to improve the offensive line tonight. It's going to happen. That's what they're going to do. It's hard this year. Might be hard next year, but it's Dynasty. We play Dynasty. We have to be patient sometimes. And honestly, a lot of this draft class is going to be patient. Like, we've talked about some of these other receivers. It's other than the top guys, you might have to wait.
So it sounds like for Dynasty, the strategy might be fade him. He'll have the poorer rookie season than what a lot of people are hoping for, and then maybe you can get him on the cheap next year, assuming that offense is going to progress. Because I mean, he's probably going to fall in rookie drafts right to this early second round. I mean, for sure now. I don't think people like the landing spot.
I wouldn't touch him until mid to late too now.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a comparison, but this is what you could see year one. How we've seen this where Jalen Reagor's free now in fantasy, and people kind of forgot about him, even the people who liked him. We could see that happen with Bateman, where you can get him for pennies on the dollar 6 months, for a year from now, 8 months from now, and then that wide receiver room clears out, the offense changes just a little bit, and he turns it around.
I mean, at least Rashad Bateman can actually catch the ball.
Yes, I said it's not a player comparison in that. It's the role. So I can't see him getting over 600 yards. Maybe not even.
I have 470 yards, 4 touchdowns.
I couldn't even look at projections for him today. It just I couldn't do it, and that's probably around where I'd have it. Like 500 is probably pushing it.
All right. Gentlemen, before we transition here, I think we're going to flip on here and quickly hear from a sponsor, and then we're going to jump into our next segment.
Choose Stockton for a healthier tomorrow.
Choose Stockton to help those who need it most.
Choose Stockton and serve your community.
At Stockton University, the choices are unlimited. Choose to soar. Choose to be an Osprey. Choose Stockton.
All right, gentlemen, coming up here at about 12:30, we will be joined again by Michael Fabiano, and I cannot wait to hear Michael's takes on all of these position landing spots. And so we previewed that a little bit with Michael yesterday, and we're going to be joined by him again. So what I want to do here in this next segment before Michael comes on is talk a little bit about the other players affected by those drafted tonight, right? We've been focusing a lot on the players themselves drafted, but we know when a player lands somewhere, it affects other players than just them, right? It affects the other wide receivers in the room, maybe other running backs on the team. So I'm interested to hear, are there particular implications that have jumped out that maybe folks haven't really dug into yet, but players that are either going to get a boost or a drop off of? And, I'll kind of start with the example, and me and Skip talked about it very early on, but the idea that Darnell Mooney, I think, is the biggest winner from Justin Fields going to Chicago. Are there other players for you all that jump out as current NFL players, but that are either going to get a boost or drop in their fantasy stock?
Am I allowed to say QB?
Yeah, go ahead. Well,
Matt Ryan, dude.
Okay.
Like, adding Kyle Pitts to that offense, it may take away from the other players there. They may take a little dip. But the options that he has to just sling the ball to, I mean, he has nothing. He consistently has 4,500-yard seasons with 25 touchdowns or more every year for the past 8 years. Adding another receiving threat like that when you have Pitts, Julio, Calvin Ridley, Hayden Hurst, even, that's stacked. Matt Ryan might push 5,000 yards this season and 30-plus touchdowns. That offense is dynamic. They have no defense. Everything's up for Matt Ryan. He's a QB1 in fantasy, and he's not going to be drafted like that. He won so hard.
It almost offsets the potential of losing Julio to a degree. I don't think fully, but there's these talks of maybe Julio they'll move on from Julio during the summer, but you have to think that Kyle Pitts pick also suggests that they are still all in on winning in doing so now. So it's an interesting balance there in Atlanta, but Matt Ryan is consistently the underappreciated dynasty quarterback. And I think, that's probably just going to continue on, but you're right, Foss. It's a perfect point to buy in on him.
I mean, 35 is not that old now for a fantasy quarterback for some reason. Like in his game.
I mean, you're playing in a 2 to 3 year window, right? And so Matt Ryan, he's got 2 years in Atlanta. I think the contract suggests that. The direction the team is taking suggests that. I mean, we'll see again tonight. If they go running back with that top pick in the second round, that might suggest again that they are all in on winning now. So you got 2 years of Matt Ryan.
Or more.
Yeah. But probably 2 years.
Try 2 years, yeah. 37 we're pushing it. But I'm not playing fantasy in that big window anyway. He's perfect.
Exactly. Skip, do you have somebody that jumps out for you?
I'm not coming up with an individual person. I know we did talk about the quarterbacks earlier, and obviously Burrow and Tua are both going to be impacted positively when you add, high-end wide receiver talent. But I think just in general overall, the Chargers offense, you add a big name, high quality offensive lineman to make overall your offense better. Everybody on there is gonna improve. I mean, plus they didn't spend first round draft capital on a skill position, so those guys at least survived one round, without getting replaced. So you gotta like that. So that's kind of where my focus is on an offense. If the offense itself improves, the rising tide raises all boats. I mean, what's good for the offense is good for the offense. I've heard that on another podcast that I enjoy, and it makes total sense. And I think it relates to the Matt Ryan with Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts makes the offense better. That's going to help everybody because they're just going to move the ball. I mean, we could be seeing, almost the impact of what we saw in Dallas last year when they grabbed CeeDee Lamb, in that now they have so many weapons on the field that they're going to be able to move the ball at will. And if they jump on a running back today, I mean, we're going to love that. I mean, right now it's what Mike Davis, but so I'm kind of going between here, Atlanta and the Chargers, but I think, those smaller moves, like improving your offensive line can have a key impact is what I'm getting at. And we shouldn't ignore that because that is a key part. We already talked about it with Pittsburgh. If they can make some moves on the offensive line, that's going to make that entire offense better. So I like to focus on that even from a fantasy perspective.
With them, it kind of transitions to Cincinnati. Like that receiving group now, are we going to see Jamar Chase do what we saw with CeeDee Lamb? And that offense just throwing the ball 600 times and him producing, Higgins producing, Boyd producing. That's where I think a receiver, someone has to drop off, right?
Well, here's the thing. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I just don't know where the volume is. I did the projections for him, and the lowest of those three, I have Chase with 98 targets, and he has the least for me. And it feels absurd to have.
It does feel absurd, but here's the thing. I was at this. I was so excited to jump in there. I was at this same point in my thinking last night. I saw Chase to the Bengals, and my initial reaction was, I don't know. That doesn't, that seems like somebody is a loser. And if you scroll onto your timeline, everyone's debating, is Tyler Boyd the loser, is T. Higgins the loser, is Jamar Chase the loser? But the thing to keep in mind here, last season, Cincinnati threw the ball 581 times. And remember, Joe Burrow didn't play the last 4 games of the season?
Yeah, I thought it was more than that, yeah.
So 581 passing attempts, with 4 of those games being Ryan Finley, and I think they rotated somebody else in there. My pre-draft projections for the offense was 625 passing attempts. they want to throw the ball with Burrow. That is very, very clear to me.
I'm
so
615.
Yeah, and when I plug in Jamar Chase or into this offense, I have right now, adjusting for Jamar Chase, it's 118 targets for Chase, 137 still for Boyd, and 125 still for Higgins. I think these three guys can operate on the field at the same time. Obviously, if you were holding out hope for Auden Tate, I'm sorry to ruin the news for you. And remember, the two additional things working in the benefit of these Cincinnati wide receivers. You don't have a tight end taking away targets yet, right?
That's Auden Tate.
Maybe that's Auden Tate. Yeah,
he's turned into Darren Waller.
He's finally a tight end. So unless they maybe go Pat Freiermuth at the top of the second, which would probably just be trolling Joe Burrow's knee, but I think it's a possibility. So unless they add, Drew Sample is not scaring me in terms of production or even CJ Uzomah. And then they don't really target the running backs in the passing game either, right? Joe Mixon is not a pass catching running back. And they're not going to heavily involve Travion Williams, despite the fact he's probably running back too now. So you have an offense that's throwing the ball a lot, and they're not throwing it to the tight end or the running back position. So I think you could legitimately have three good fantasy football wide receivers in Cincinnati.
Yeah, and the roles are spread out. Chase is well-rounded alpha. Higgins has that red zone threat, and Boyd's not going to catch the ball in the red zone. Boyd gets 3 touchdowns, I'm going to be excited. But he's going to work the underneath. It kind of works perfectly. Like they mesh well.
I have six touchdowns for Chase, 5 for Higgins, 4 for Boyd. That's where I'm at right now.
I have 9 for Higgins, 5 for Chase, 3 for Boyd.
See, I worry that I do think Higgins' touchdowns are going to be curtailed a little bit.
What do you have the yardage at? I have 852 for Higgins, 811 for Chase, and 780 for Boyd.
Oh, you are low, my friend. I have so wait, read your numbers back again.
Higgins 852, Chase 811, and Boyd 780.
Yeah, see, so I have Higgins at 1070, Boyd at 1050, Chase at 1049.
I'm always low though with my project. You
are always a little low.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit lower than you because I try to be a little risk adverse.
A little bit of a hater.
Well, I hate on everything, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good situation for him, and it's awesome for Joe Burrow if they can protect him. If they get Trevin Jenkins here, it's beautiful. They
could, and they legitimately could.
It's literally the luck of the stupid if that happens. They're passing on Sewell and landing him.
Gentlemen, one of the things I think not being talked about enough, and Skip alluded to this when he was talking about the Chargers, but I think we skipped, no pun intended, I think we skipped right past the number one, the first offensive tackle off the board with Penei Sewell falling to Detroit. It was not an expectation that I personally had. I thought Cincinnati should have taken him. I thought if Cincinnati didn't take him, Miami would take him. And then I thought if he fell to 7, Detroit would move out of the spot. But with Detroit taking Penei Sewell, which, by the way, I think was a smart decision by them, DeAndre Swift, my pre-draft running back one, and actually post-draft, my running back one from 2020, my highest rated player. I liked his landing spot. Now, he is looking to fully take on the lead back role there in Detroit for the entire season. And you add in there, he now gets the top offensive lineman in the class. And Penei Sewell is absolutely somebody who contributes to run blocking at a high level. So nobody's, from what I've seen, nobody's talking about the bump to DeAndre Swift with Penei Sewell coming there. And, I know I have to go in and make some tweaks. I only added in rookies. I tried not to tweak yet my projections for the other guys. But I know I'm going to go in and boost DeAndre Swift up. And he's probably going to land, running back 7 probably in my projections for this season.
He already was I didn't do the projections, but he was my RB7 coming into this draft.
I love it.
Yeah,
they have no pass catchers either. So he's going to be other than Hawkinson. He's going to be targeted in the pass game.
Could he see the kind of passing volume that we've seen like to Alvin Kamara and maybe even Christian McCaffrey? I mean, could they throw the ball to him that much? Because now he's above number 7.
They might have to. It's literally him and TJ Hawkinson. If they take a wide receiver here, it's still not answering anything. You know what? Tyrell Williams is their number 1 now.
Yeah.
And Brashard Perryman, like, that's not it. I would absolutely throw to DeAndre Swift before throwing to those guys.
Quintez Cephas.
It'll be an interesting roster construction thought process here, because I think wide receiver at the top of the second here for Detroit makes a ton of sense. Just, looking at the roster, looking at the talent that's available, looking at the potential that Elijah Moore's there, Terrace Marshall could still be there. But from a roster, this is a long-term build. So I almost feel like they might be comfortable punting wide receiver for this year and just letting the running backs do the work. But that cut out again?
Yeah, cut out.
Oh, there you are.
Whatever your thoughts were on that were probably awesome if you want to reiterate.
Yeah, it was I was just saying, I think that when it comes to Detroit here, it makes sense to take wide receiver here to give Jared Goff a shot to prove that he can be the quarterback of the future, right? I mean, I don't think any of us expect Jared Goff to be the Lions' long-term answer, but you're paying them for 2 years. You have to at least give him a shot to prove that, right?
Yeah. Honestly, it'd kind of be nice with Goff if they waited and punted another round beyond Amon-Ra St. Brown, playing that big slot role, which we saw Cooper Kupp.
If Tylan Wallace falls to the 3rd round as well, I think, that would be a guy who could soak up a ton of volume and kind of balances out the bigger receivers that they have on their team. So you're right. You could wait until the 3rd as well to go for a wide receiver.
Yeah,
I don't think they want anything to do with Goff in the future. I think he's a bridge guy for whoever they're going to draft really early next season.
Okay, good point. I think you're right, but I think the process still holds, right? Because if you're Detroit, don't you want to make Jared Goff look as good as you possibly can and get some resale value out of him, right?
Yeah. If they take some receiver, that has to be a good spot too, right? For fantasy.
Great spot.
I mean, it's better than a good bit of the ones we saw in the 1st round. Like you said, Elijah Moore.
I think Foss is getting so worked up here over the wide receiver that I'm
just breaking everything.
He's just worked himself up right out of a stable connection.
Well, it's Detroit. When you just start talking about the Lions, things don't work.
They just broke everything.
Absolutely. All right. So, is there any final thoughts here on just secondary benefactors? I think the last maybe position group that jumps out to me is the wide receivers in San Francisco. Is this another boost for Brandon Ayuk? Is this a possible resurgence? Or thinking long term, because I don't think we have the running back of the future in San Francisco right now. But I'm looking at the running back position in San Francisco as something to avoid in the future at this point, because look at the way Josh Allen has taken the red zone rushing touchdowns away from the Buffalo running backs. I think I see a very similar future here for the San Francisco running backs.
But can Trey Lance take the kind of beating at quarterback as Josh Allen is? Because Josh Allen is just a stout human being.
Well, I'm not saying they should run QB power with him 5 times a game,
right?
But if you're at the goal line, he has the ability to be a goal line rushing rusher. We've seen that.
Yeah.
I don't have his measurements in front of me, but he's a pretty big guy, isn't he? Like 230 pounds. I mean,
not quite.
Okay.
Not quite Josh Allen's. I believe he's 220. Let me get his let me pull up his official measurements.
What about
here.
Lance? Yeah, Lance is who I was wondering because
Trey Lance is 6'3", 224. And I think Josh Allen is about 6'5", 230. So a little bit smaller, but that's been my comp for him all along, fantasy-wise.
I like it. But yeah, I think that's a good point on the 49ers running back situation. Anytime you get a quarterback that's a capable runner, the running backs are going to lose out on some opportunities to get those cheap touchdowns, inside the 10-yard line. And you have to be cognizant of that when you're looking at running backs. Now, if the offense is so good and one running back does step up to at least get 50% of the touches, then they're going to put up numbers regardless, and it's going to be fine, and you don't have to worry about it. I mean, we've seen that, like Dallas, for example. I mean, Dak Prescott can run the ball and score some touchdowns on his own, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Zeke Elliott's been a great fantasy running back his entire career. So I'm not overly concerned about it as long as the running back becomes the guy in San Francisco. I think that's been the problem, is that they keep just running back by committee, whoever's the hot hand, and we don't know who to play. You've got a guy on your bench, and all of a sudden, McKinnon comes out of nowhere for a huge game. It's like, well, how was I supposed to know to start him? Then you play him the next week, and someone else steps up and gets all the action. So that's the frustrating part with San Francisco. So we need a guy to step up before we can really trust a running back, for fantasy purposes.
All right, so we're going to go ahead here and welcome in Michael Fabiano. Michael joined us yesterday. We had a great discussion here. So really excited to have you back today. Michael is, of course, the senior fantasy analyst for Sports Illustrated. So we are really lucky to have you here to talk fantasy football with us today. And Michael, I got to ask you first and foremost, starting at the running back position, I think that's where we have to start. I think I heard you screaming all the way from the West Coast here with that Travis Etienne pick to start.
That sucked. I mean, because Najee Harris, we got Najee. We're like, we want Najee in Pittsburgh. It's going to happen. Yes, it happened. Najee's going to be the guy. Offensive line questions, sure, but he's in place. And so you're feeling good. And then what do the Jaguars do? And then did you see Urban Meyer's quote last night?
Yes.
Really, you're going to take Travis Etienne to be a third down back behind James Robinson and Carlos freaking Hyde? Really? Okay. Things are a little bit different in the NFL than they are in college, coach. So I don't even know how to project him. I really don't, because he's the more talented back by a mile. James Robinson was an undrafted free agent who was great last year, averaged almost 18 points per game. Until we get into the summer months and into camp, I don't know where to rank either one of these guys, because based on talent, Etienne's going to be the starter, right? But then you hear what Urban Meyer says, third down back, and he could end up lining up as a wide receiver. He's very talented. He's very versatile. Etienne, that is. But man, I don't know. That one stinks, because the Jets have a pick at the top of the second round. You're thinking, oh boy, they could get Travis Etienne, and boom, we've got another potential top 15 running back as a rookie. Atlanta's coming up here. They could maybe get Javonte Williams, and things are starting to fall into place, the running back position. But the Jags mucked it all up because they wanted Trevor Lawrence to have his teammate there from Clemson. It is what it is. I honestly don't know that either one of these two backs is going to be more than a flex starter if this is a backfield committee. And right now, I don't know how it can be anything but a backfield committee, because you've got a guy who was a top 8 running back in fantasy last season. You've got one of the top 2 running back prospects in the 2021 class. And clearly Urban Meyer has a soft spot for Carlos Hyde. So this thing could be a mess. It's really tough to gauge what this situation is going to ultimately be until we get into the summer months and hear some more reports out of camp. But that one stunk. And honestly, more of the picks that were offensive skill position players last night were good. There was a couple of stinkers, but overall, I think it was a good night for fantasy managers.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a little bit Najee Harris being an exciting pick. Is that a guy who you feel like could be an impact player year one for fantasy purposes?
No doubt about it. Pittsburgh has always liked to use that featured back under Mike Tomlin, whether it's been Le'Veon Bell or Rashard Mendenhall or Willie Parker. I mean, James Conner in that one year where Le'Veon Bell took his football and went home. And Harris is in that mold. And he's a 3-down back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a powerful runner. This guy can do it all, right? The offensive line is a question mark. I get it. And people out there who are going to be the negative Nancy's, and sometimes I'm in that category, but the offensive line in Pittsburgh needs work. Luckily, the Steelers still have a bunch of picks, and they can potentially upgrade that offensive line. Hopefully they will, because that's going to be the biggest question mark. But Harris is a top 20 pick right now. I would say he's probably end of the second round, and maybe that's even a little conservative. Depending on what we see coming up in the summer months, his value could rise, but he's in that RB2 conversation without question. Pittsburgh did not run the ball successfully last season. They abandoned the run for a lot of the second half of the season. They threw the ball about 70% of the time. It was bananas, which is great for the wide receivers, not so much for the running game. But this is a major upgrade over Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, and Kalen Ballage.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know I'm very excited about Najee Harris. We were talking a little bit earlier about his pass catching potential too, and how that could really give him a lot of fantasy football upside. Michael, we've spent a lot of this morning as well talking about the big run on wide receivers. We had a lot of wide receivers come off the board last night. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about your initial impressions overall at the position from last night?
Well, Chase going to Cincinnati, even though maybe like it's not the best fit for the Bengals because they have good wide receivers and they needed offensive line help to protect Joe Burrow. As a fantasy manager, I dig it the most because now Joe Burrow has that built-in rapport with Jamar Chase. They put together one of the great quarterback and wide receiver seasons of all time in 2019. Right? Chase had 20 touchdowns. He averaged over 20 yards a catch. He was bananas good. And Burrow had 61 touchdown passes that season. That rapport is built in. So they get together in camps, training camp, preseason, whatever the case may be. Boom. Burrow knows where Chase is going to be. And Chase knows Burrow's tendencies. So as much as I love T. Higgins, that one hurt him. Jamar Chase is going to be the top rookie wide receiver drafted in both redrafts and dynasty, of course. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he finishes in the top 25 wide receivers as a rookie. Remember, A.J. Green had 104 targets last season. Boom, those are gone. Right. And so you've got, much like Justin Jefferson, right? When Stephon Diggs was traded, that was, I believe, 94 targets that were gone. And Jefferson inherited a whole bunch of those. And I think Jamar Chase can inherit almost all of A.J. Green's targets and maybe then some because, once again, Burrow has that comfort with Jamar Chase. This kid's super talented. I've compared him to Anquan Bolden. He's just a big physical guy who makes plays. He's going to be a top 3 pick in Dynasty. And I really feel like I don't know that he's going to be Justin Jefferson statistically, but could he give you 1,000 yards and 6 to 8 touchdowns with 70 catches? I absolutely think so, yes.
Yeah, in Justin Jefferson last season, certainly being an outlier, right, for first-year wide receiver production. But
Did you guys lose the audio?
Yeah, I think Matt's popped out a little bit. I mean, okay. If he had a CeeDee Lamb type season, it wouldn't be bad for first-year rookie like last year.
No. And CeeDee was almost at 1,000 yards. No, that would be a pretty good season as well. I think he can do a little bit better than CeeDee, only because CeeDee was on pace to put up Justin Jefferson numbers. And then Dak got hurt and Ben DiNucci came into our lives, and that was hell. So, especially if you're a Cowboys fan like I am. So, Jamar Chase is, to me, he's probably a top 50 overall pick. Borderline. He's going to be very close. People are going to be excited about him. And then when you go down the list, Jalen Waddle going to the Dolphins. He reunites with Tua Tagovailoa. That's going to be nice for that former Alabama duo. I don't know if Waddle's going to put up huge numbers. I could see him catching 50, 60 passes, 700 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood. But you've got, of course, the duo of Devontae Parker and Marvin Jones in Miami. You've got Mike Gesicki in Miami as well. They could potentially draft a star running back here, potentially to be the lead guy there ahead of Myles Gaskin. So there's a lot of mouths to feed in Miami. Devontae Smith, did you guys catch this? I love the fact that the Cowboys made a trade with division rival Philadelphia to screw over division rival New York Giants because the Giants wanted Smith. And the Cowboys were probably thinking, well, the Giants already added Kenny Galladay. Do we really want them to get the Heisman Trophy winner as well? Nah, Let's send him to Philadelphia, where the Eagles have a big need at the wide receiver position. Now he'll be in there with of course, Jalen Reagor, and I would think that Devontae Smith could be drafted ahead of Jalen Reagor in a lot of redraft leagues. And then when you move down the list, the Kadarius Toney pick was weird, man. I mean,
right?
Like I get it. Like the Giants wanted to add a wide receiver. You've already got Sterling Shepard who can play in the slot and on the outside, and Darius Slayton as well. Of course, they signed Kenny Galladay. You got Evan Ingram as well. Kyle Rudolph is in the mix too. That just seems like a stretch for me. I mean, I don't know. Like I know he's a playmaking guy. Almost had 1,000 yards last year for Florida, but that was weird. I'd rather go offensive line. But you know what? As a Cowboys fan, good for the Giants. You know what? Whatever. That's fine with me. I think they needed more protection for Daniel Jones. Ultimately, they got him another weapon. And then when you look at Rashad Bateman in Baltimore, Bateman may have been ranked higher if the draft class didn't have so many star wideouts. This is a bad fit, though, man. Like, you've got Hollywood Brown. They signed Sammy Watkins. You've got Devin Duvernay. You've got Miles Boykin. You've got Mark Andrews there in an offense that doesn't throw the football, right? Wide receivers were dead last in routes run and targets in Baltimore last season. So this is not a great fit for Bateman. Watkins is there on a short-term deal, so maybe in the long term he'll end up being more of an impact player from a fantasy perspective. But as a rookie, I don't know that he's going to make much of an impact.
Yeah, I would agree with those sentiments for sure. It seems like we're off Toney, we're off Bateman. Michael, are there guys still out there at the wide receiver position, you know, potentially guys who could come off the board early or even later tonight that you're still interested in and you feel like could still be, you know, have year one or long-term fantasy football impact?
Yeah, no doubt. There's plenty of them. I mean, Rondell Moore out of Purdue is one of those names. Elijah Moore didn't get drafted. I thought maybe the Saints or the Packers would go after him. How pissed is Aaron Rodgers? So not only is he already mad at Green Bay and he wants out, but they don't even like acquiesce and be like, well, Aaron, here, we're going to give you a wide receiver. Here you go. No, instead they drafted DB. Whatever. And Denver didn't draft a quarterback. They didn't draft a quarterback, guys. I don't know what's going to happen. The Packers are saying they're not going to trade him, but who the hell knows? I mean, Houston also said, we're not going to trade Deshaun Watson, and then everything went sideways there. Terrace Marshall Jr. is also a guy that's interesting to me. He fell a little bit, was projected to be a late first rounder by some of the scouts out there. Tylan Wallace, also out of Oklahoma State, is someone to keep an eye on. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Equanimous, his brother. Who knows? Maybe the Packers will take him and then reunite him. So there's still quite a few good wide receivers out there. Diami Brown, also from North Carolina. Nico Collins, Tutu Atwell. There's still a bunch of guys out there that can make an impact. But as we talked about yesterday, it's all about opportunity and where these guys fit and where they're drafted.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, I think we may have buried the lead a little bit here. Of course, the quarterbacks were the story of the show last night. And the first two went as we expected, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson. But then things got a little interesting, right? Trey Lance to San Francisco. Justin Fields falls to 11 for the Bears. And then, of course, the Pats sat right there at 15 and got Mac Jones. Interested to kind of your overall takes here at the quarterback position, either the two guys that we knew about or some of these more surprising landing spots.
All right, so we'll start with Lawrence, and we've been analyzing him as a Jaguar for a while now. He's going to be good, folks, okay? He reminds me of Peyton Manning, a little bit more mobile, of course, than Peyton, but he helps everybody in that Jacksonville offense, whether it's DJ Chark or whether it's Marvin Jones or Laviska Shenault. All these guys get upgrades with Lawrence. I don't know that it'll be Justin Herbert, but could be a top 15, top 12 quarterback. I think he can. Zach Wilson, I like to look at trends. Hey, guys, do you remember the last time the Jets drafted a really good quarterback? Like, in any round. Think about it. You Chad Pennington?
Yeah, we're going way back.
Right? Like, I'm looking back. It's Joe freaking Namath. Like, we're talking about, like, the 1960s is the last time the Jets drafted a quarterback that made an impact. Right? Okay, Richard Todd had some good seasons, and Ken O'Brien had a couple of seasons that were pretty fantasy relevant, although they drafted him ahead of Dan Marino, so that didn't work out very well. And I get it. Like, the Jets front office is completely different. Joe Douglas could potentially bring this franchise to new heights. I get it. But it's a weird trend, man, when a team can't get it right at the quarterback position for like 50-plus years. And Zach Wilson, and the talent's there, but he only had one good year at BYU, right? Only one. the Jets' number one wide receiver is a guy who's never had 1,000 yards with Corey Davis. Then you have, Jamison Crowder. He's a nice slot guy. You got Keelan Cole there, Denzel Mims. Okay. I think they'll draft a running back, so that should be a good thing. They drafted Vera Tucker out of USC, which is nice to help improve the offensive line because you want to protect that rookie. Man, I don't know. Like, I'll never come out and say that a Jets quarterback drafted, no matter where he's drafted, is going to come out and be a fantasy impact maker, because that's not been the trend for most of the franchise's history. So he won't be picked in a lot of redrafts. Clearly, he'll be a dynasty pick. But from a fantasy perspective, I like Trey Lance and Justin Fields better. And Justin Fields end up in a good spot in Chicago. Hopefully this is enough, and probably won't be, but at least to appease Bears fans who are still pissed that they traded up to get Mitchell Trubisky, who's now a backup in Buffalo, ahead of Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, one of the biggest does of all time in NFL draft history. But they did make a great move to get Fields. A lot of folks like him. He's a very accurate passer at Ohio State, completed more than 70% of his passes, also can give you some love with his feet. And while they're already saying, well, Andy Dalton's going to be the starter in week 1, well, he probably won't be the starter in week 2 or 3 because they're going to be clamoring for Fields. And Andy Dalton's just an average, mediocre NFL starter. Fields will be the starter there sooner rather than later, I feel like, even if Dalton opens. And that running ability, man, it's big. And hey, if Allen Robinson he probably couldn't be happier because he's got a halfway decent quarterback prospect who would be very good at the NFL level. Throwing him the football, also good news for Darnell Mooney there. And then Trey Lance, I don't know how much we're going to see of him, though. Like, when you draft a quarterback 3rd overall, in this day and age, it's like, well, he's got to start. But Jimmy Garoppolo's still there. So if Garoppolo opens the season as a starter and the Niners are playing well, Trey Lance maybe doesn't play until midseason. Maybe the Niners do like a Dolphins move where, like, Ryan Fitzpatrick was really good and he was leading the team to wins, but they still brought in Tua Tagovailoa. And maybe that could be what the Niners do. He'll compete for a starting job, but Garoppolo looks to me, I would say he's still the favorite in week 1.
Yeah.
But he ain't going to finish the season as the starter. Trey Lance is a guy who 2 years ago had 28 touchdowns and no picks. Now, I don't care that he's playing against lesser competition in North Dakota State. That's really impressive. He also rushed for 1,100 yards. He reminds a lot of people of Josh Allen. He's not as tall as Josh Allen is, maybe not as big as Josh Allen, but the skill set is there. Really intriguing guy from a fantasy football standpoint. And then we go to Mac Jones, who, I had the Niners drafting him because I just heard so many prominent people and friends in the business telling me that was the direction they were going to go. Ultimately, the Niners didn't go in that direction. I always was skeptical that they would have drafted that much they would have traded that much draft capital for Mac Jones, right? and ultimately they didn't. But he ends up falling in a good spot with the Patriots. Not as a rookie. I don't know that, and you know what? Belichick already said, well, Cam's our starter until he's not, right? I mean, that's the National Football League. But Mac Jones, could he start some games as a rookie? Yeah. Was Cam good last year? Not really. They added more weapons. If the Patriots are playing well, and then Mac Jones maybe doesn't play a whole heck of a lot in his rookie season, but he's the future of the franchise. He's the new guy who Josh McDaniels is going to have to sort of mold into, maybe not Tom Brady, but that next pocket passer that could potentially bring the Patriots back to glory. I don't know if that's going to happen. Jones is a guy who was super, super accurate last year. I think he completed like 77% of his passes. He was bananas good. But he also had a ton of talent in Alabama, which is crazy, all the wide receivers that he had there. So I think that's a good fit for him, though, because he doesn't have to come right in and feel the pressure of being a starter week 1. Did you guys see the pictures of him, by the way? He's almost like a cookie belly for like an NFL quarterback, but it's like Tom Brady back in 2000 or whatever, when he kind of looked like, he was still in high school, like very kind of toy and blah. Same kind of thing with Mac Jones. I thought that was funny, but the fact that he ended up in New England, I'm not surprised. And I think it's a good fit for him long-term from a fantasy perspective. I don't expect much from him as a rookie, though.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking about these quarterbacks, the difference between the guys with rushing upside and then, the lack of upside that you get for your pocket passer type quarterbacks. And, Mac Jones, for me, the limited upside makes it difficult where, the upside of Trey Lance makes it worth, even in your dynasty league, stashing them, even if it takes a year or two, waiting for that payoff. We didn't see Lamar pay off year 1. We didn't see Josh Allen pay off year 1. So I'm definitely very interested to see Trey Lance, and I think he's well worth the wait.
It's really crazy the Patriots went from pocket passer to mobile quarterback immediately back to pocket passer as well. They went back to what they know best.
Yeah, and that's also a reason why I don't know how much Jones will play as a rookie unless Cam is just terrible. Because I mean, you're not running RPOs with Mac Jones. I mean, like this is Cam Newton had 12 rushing touchdowns last season. That's going to be a different story with Mac Jones under center. So we'll find out. Maybe Mac Jones lights the world on fire in the preseason, and the Patriots decide to make an audible and go with him. But I think ultimately Cam Newton will be under center in week 1. And unless he's brutally bad, especially with all the weapons that they added in the offseason, I don't know that he's going to relinquish that job for most of 2021.
And it's interesting. Right before you got on here, Michael, we were talking about other, current NFL pros that just benefited from some of these rookie picks last night. And as we're talking about the Patriots, I think this is a huge win for Damian Harris, right? Or even Sony Michel as a deeper guy. These running backs got their touchdowns taken away by Cam last year. And if they transition back to Mac Jones, all of a sudden the New England Patriots running back could become fantasy relevant again.
Yeah, it's a good point. Especially Harris. I like Harris more than Michelle. But I don't know that Cam is going to be on the bench much this season. I really don't. I think he'll be the guy. And unless he plays horribly or the Patriots are losing and they decide to go with the rookie, I don't know that that's going to change. And once Mac Jones becomes a starter, whether it's halfway through this upcoming season or maybe to start 2022, Damian Harris is